What's up, Dark Side? Hang on, I'll get you up here. Let's do this. This. Sorry, I'm trying to do 14 things at once here. Oh, just got back from walking the dog. Working on you, Dark Side. Trying to get you up here. Freeze, what's up? Dark Side, can you hear?
Yes, sir. How you doing, Warren?
Hey, not too shabby. Trying to get a little healthy. I usually do like these walk jogs with my dog, so went on a longer one today because I definitely ate a little bit too much during the festive season. How are you doing?
I hear you, brother.
Yeah,
Good, man. My
good.
wife and I went out last night. It was our 27th wedding anniversary.
Oh,
Had a great
congratulations.
time. Thank you so much.
Wow, you're not that old,
Yeah.
Dark Side.
Yeah, we're getting up there. But, we went out and had an amazing dinner, went to the casino, made a little bit of money,
Nice.
and yeah,
Sounds fun.
we share our anniversary with Bitcoin's birthday.
Super. Hey, Emperor. How are you?
What's up, guys?
Oh, how's 2025 treating you so far?
So far so good.
Nice.
My it's early, but my what do you call it? Resolution
Yes.
is going well. So
Good for
yeah.
you. Is that the one you were talking about? You were on the Fred space the other day when everybody was given their resolutions, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Basically, I'm 30 something years old, and my resolution is to be disciplined, and shouldn't be hard being 30 something, but yeah, with trading is kind of my application of discipline, I guess. But yeah, so far so good.
Good for you. Yeah, I was pretty responsible. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. I was like a roller coaster where I was responsible and then degen and then responsible, and then when I hit my 40s, I was completely degen for a while. So I feel your pain, so hang in there.
Yeah, it's weird because I've been like trading long enough to not really have an excuse when I go on tilt. It's like I know better, and I have the
Yes.
experience to know better. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean,
Um,
and you're using the correct word with tilt.
yeah,
As a poker term, I can fully identify. In poker, I found it was best if you feel yourself going on tilt, either anger or frustration or whatever, to actually just get up and walk it off because you do make dumb decisions when you are on tilt. So
yeah,
smart move.
like really dumb.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Keep the emotions out. Keep the booze out. A lot of people would sit at the table and drink, and then they were a good player at the beginning of the evening, but then towards after a few drinks, they would make stupid decisions as well. So definitely, if you're in any of these kind of games, I use the word games loosely because, like, there's a few of us in the Bitcoin space that don't view poker and trading as a game because there are people that win at that game. So if you're gonna, do it, make sure you stick by your rules, stick by your guns, because you slip up if you get off your program. So definitely hang in there.
Yeah, I would say like I've had normies that are like, "Oh, trading, isn't that just gambling?" And I always compare it to poker, and I also think blackjack could be described in the same way where yeah, normal people, it's essentially just gambling, but it is something that you can develop a skill for, and like I always say, like, show me a game, a gambling casino kind of game, where someone can have an 80% win rate, and I'll show you the first ever bankrupt casino.
Right.
um
Yep.
I like with blackjack. I mean, I think it's also kind of similar to poker too, where you can uh, like what are the odds? Like if you know how to count cards, what like how
I think
what does that take?
it's very slight, but
Uh,
probably the best explanation, or maybe the best way to support what you're saying, is the fact that casinos actually kick certain players out, certain blackjack players out. You know that there's a small percentage that actually have a slight edge. So other than
yeah,
that, I
yeah,
wouldn't. I count cards like the dumb way, where you're counting tens and whatnot, but not actually keeping track of the whole. So I mean, in blackjack, I would just play blackjack if I was just cooling down from being on tilt or waiting for a table or whatever. Like, it was just more of entertainment. But my win percentage in blackjack's probably mid to high 40s, just because I'm a little more conscientious in that game as well. But I don't profess to be a card count or anything. But I definitely get
so
what you're
like
saying, because there are players that get booted from casinos because they definitely
yeah,
have the edge there. But I bet
but
that's less than
it's
one
very
percent.
slight.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very, very,
Oh
very slight.
wow,
Yeah.
wow.
It's super intelligent people. So it's a small, small, small margin. So when you read about these people that actually beat the casinos, they're, like that MIT crew that did it. There was
Gate kids.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. They're definitely upper echelon when it comes to brain power.
Interesting.
What's up, Freeze? And Philip DM. How are you guys doing?
What's going on, Lauren? What's going on, boys? By the way, I gotta give a
We're
shout out to
doing
you,
great.
Dark Side. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Freeze. We'll let Philip chime in after you.
Yeah, I gotta give a shout out to Dark Side. I was listening to the space with Gary Cardone the other day. You were just ripping, bro. But you called that bottom of the MSTR, I guess mini bear market, whatever, perfectly. We just fucking ripped the day after. I loaded up. Like, I don't know what it was, but you just gave me some confidence. I loaded up. You were just like load the boat, and I was just like, yeah, I'm definitely gonna do that, and so I did. But I had a quick question. I saw everyone's trying to wrap their head around this whole preferred convertible, whatever this guy just financially engineered, again, whatever he just whipped up, and I'm trying to wrap my head around it too. I don't fully understand it, but I was reading through Dylan Leclerc's long form thread that he put out on it, and I saw someone post a critique to it. This Andy Costin guy, Damped Spring is his Twitter account, and basically he was saying that it looks like it's not perpetual the way that it's structured, that there is an ability for it to be called away at par, or if it goes like a certain level in the money. I don't know if you guys saw it yet, but I would love to know what you guys think about it. I
I
always
would
like to
just
look
say
at the
Yeah, I would just say Andy's a super smart guy. He's not the biggest like Bitcoin maxi or anything, but he's a super smart uh, fixed income trader, macro guy.
yeah, he definitely seems like a bear from what I can tell. But what he said kind of made sense to me in a way. It didn't seem like total bear BS. So I was just curious to see what the other side of these things are.
Yeah, so I'll take a swing at it. The First of all, we don't know the details yet, right? So what he's done is he's enabled himself. He's given himself a structure by which he can create products that there's demand for, right? And those products could be anything in range from a kind of
Hey, hang on,
traditional.
Dark. Can you improve your sound quality at all? It sounds like you're talking through a red Solo cup or something.
You got it. Let me change headphones. Hold on.
Hey, can we have Zach weigh in between, and then we'll get back to Philip? Zach, how are you this morning?
Doing well. How are you?
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Darcy. We actually don't know what the features of this security are going to be. From the announcement, unless there's been another announcement that I missed, it says it will be perpetual, right? Meaning that they will remain preferred shares. They won't convert automatically into common shares or into some other instrument. Uh, and so, if they're convertible into common, that would make it at the option of the shareholder, which is mostly how preferred shares work. Preferred shares, I think we talked about this a bit in a space last night, but it's a very broad term. Delaware law allows you a ton of flexibility for what features you add to preferred shares. They almost always have a liquidation preference attached, but then what other rights they have attached to them varies wildly from case to case. They might have special dividend rights. They might have a redemption right to be purchased back after certain milestones at the option of the shareholder. They might be convertible on a one-to-one basis. They might be convertible on a more than 1-to-1 basis, depending on certain milestones, right? So that would be like anti-dilution protections in private financings. You could do that for public stock if that's what you need to move these things. So all we have from the announcement is they will be perpetual. It will be an underwritten public offering. So you'll have investment banks involved, and this will be a public rather than private placement. And then the announcement said it may have liquidation preference, it may have convertibility to common stock, it may have special dividends, and it may have redemption rights, is what the announcement says. But it does not commit to any of this.
That's kind of what I understood. We'll let Darkside finish his swing. I don't know if Teddy wanted to weigh in after that, and then Philip, we haven't forgotten about you, so we'll give you a what's up. Darkside, hopefully your sound is a little better.
Hey, is that better?
It's a little better, yes, thank you.
Okay, good. So yeah, taking a swing at it, I think that he's creating a product that can meet the demands of specific end users, right? So for anyone from pension funds to ARB desks to insurance companies to retail, using using the preferred as a vehicle. Um, about a month ago, I speculated that we would see some type of warrant, a publicly traded warrant, um, creating helping him create yield through unique products. And I think what you're going to see here is something along those lines, right? It's obviously not a warrant; it's structured as a preferred, but I suspect you're going to see everything from zero coupons with high strike prices, um, and uh, and that would create sort of the warrant effect, where you have a security that actually competes directly with leap options, all the way to um, potentially a security that has a coupon that's a PIK, meaning a payment in kind. So the coupon gets paid with with additional shares of MicroStrategy, and that's very attractive to pension funds, insurance companies, and is also convertible at a much higher strike price. So yeah, I think there's a lot that you can do with this perpetual preferred structure. But yeah, I agree. The term perpetual is kind of weird, because if they're redeemable and they're convertible, then they're sort of perpetual, but not completely perpetual. But nonetheless, I think the big takeaway here is he's he's continuing to kind of focus on delivering products that the market wants, right? And this is just yet another structure that will give him the ability to create um, a very liquid convertible bond-esque product, right? I think the issue with the convertible bonds is that they're not liquid. They're issued through private placement. They're not securities that openly trade. This would be a security that openly trades, and therefore, fits a different type of investor than the convertible bond does.
Yeah. So it
I
sounds
was
like
discussing this with
we don't
Teddy
know
last night.
the specific details yet until all the fine print comes out. But then also in layman's terms, it almost sounds like, us folk who are holding just the common shares maybe get the bad end of the coin if in both positive and negative instances. If something goes south, we actually get the worst end of that deal, and then if there's something positive, we don't get it until later. Is that kind of correct, or help me as a
It
layperson
really
to?
it depends how they're
I
structured.
gotcha.
We just don't know yet.
Okay.
I mean, like, look, preferred shares are just generally they're better than common shares, right? They're usually convertible into common shares, but they have extra rights attached, and so that instinct that the common shareholders are moving down the capital stack, right? Right now they're below creditors in liquidation preference. Now they will be below creditors and preferred shareholders in liquidation preference, and there might be other rights that make the common stock theoretically worth less relative to the other.
But we can assume based on what he said prior to this announcement, which was last quarter, that he had plans to do other forms of intelligent leverage for the benefit of common shareholders, that the intention here is to benefit common shareholders. So I think
I
that we
mean,
could
maybe,
make
and
some
he's a big common
assumptions
shareholder.
on the structure. Sorry, what was that?
Maybe. I mean, he's a big common shareholder, so he's not incentivized to screw over common shareholders. I think
Well, I just
you and I
think
were talking
like
about
he's
last night,
about.
like the interesting thing now, because we don't know what these preferred shares to have, is to speculate on the motive. And like I mentioned, I think there's an optimistic and a pessimistic case. If you want to look at this from like an optimistic or bullish perspective, it's he is creating these new securities instruments to tap into other pools of of capital in tandem with the ATM common share offerings and the convertible note offerings. This is just yet another source of capital that can juice the Bitcoin yield. The pessimistic take is, as a common shareholder, you wouldn't want to introduce these other securities that sit ahead of you on the capital stack. And so you would only do that, right? You'd only disadvantage yourself as a common shareholder if you thought that the liquidity for the common ATMs might be drying up or might not be sort of deep enough in the future to get as much capital as you want to get. And so this is, more powerful arrow in the quiver, but he's now had to pull this one out because the others are not getting him where he needs to be.
I don't think that's necessarily accurate either. So the common shares still have an MNAV, which means he could continue to tap the ATM if he wanted to. It would result in a lower share price in the short term, but he would acquire more Bitcoin per share, and in the long term, you could assume that that would generate a longer term better yield. So I think what he wants to do and why he's doing this is because he wants the common shares, which are the public facing price of this stock, to perform very well in Q1 of 2025. The performance of your stock as a publicly traded company in the first quarter of a year is very important to drawing in investors in Q2, Q3, and Q4. And ultimately, it's the same thing of why people are looking at MSDR as an investment this year. It's based on its performance last year and the years prior. So he had the ability to really hammer the ATM in quarter four of last year because the stock was already performing at such a high clip, especially compared to the underlying asset Bitcoin, and he was less worried about the share price trending up. Also, doing the ATM and aggressively doing the ATM, causing short term dilution, even though it was accretive in the fourth quarter, gave a better starting point for Q1 of 2025. So there is an argument to be made that, having the share price going into Q1 of 2025 at 300 opposed to 450, where if he had done no ATMs in Q4 it might have been at 450 still. Would that have been better? And that's again going back to the marketing strategy surrounding bringing in new future investors, which is ultimately his entire plan, right? The financial engineering of MicroStrategy as a product through ATM, through converts, and now through preferred shares. So I think that this is all bullish. Obviously people get shaken out, and the timing of that last pullback was the first one for many, but I don't see any reason to look at this in a pessimistic way as a common shareholder. And like you mentioned, he is a significant percentage of the common shares. Wouldn't he be considering his best interests as well as the other common shareholders when making these decisions? I think the answer to that is yes. So I'm more leaning optimistic, as you know, Zach, and I know your stance as well. So yeah, we can leave it at that.
Yeah, let me just ramp it up one notch. I'm super optimistic as far as the position of the existing common shareholder. The structure, what he's going to do is structure converts, albeit convertible preferreds, that have that ha- that increase the yield, right, of the Bitcoin per share, right? So if you invest in a security and you pay $300 for it and it converts at 500, you're capturing both the MNAV and that conversion kind of premium. So yeah, I don't see any negative. I don't see. I mean, if your argument on the negative side is that, well, this security is senior in the cap structure, that really only plays out in a bankruptcy. And I don't really think if there's a bankruptcy, it doesn't really matter to the common shareholder anyway, right? So I just
The institutions that a couple of you guys mentioned as being the participants in this or the buyers. Is it what Teddy just shared about this outperforming IBIT and other of the ETFs, or is it one of the only ways that they can actually have Bitcoin exposure? Like, what is the reason that they're actually going to be buying this versus other Bitcoin related stocks that they could purchase? Can you answer that? And then maybe also, do you think there will be common shareholders that get scared out by this? Two questions there.
Okay, so on the first side, there are a slew of institutions that can buy preferreds, but that can't buy common stock because preferreds are seen in a way as being debt. So this opens up a world of investors that previously could only invest in the converts, and maybe they couldn't even invest in the converts because they're private placements. So
So they
this is
couldn't buy the ETFs even,
right.
correct?
They could
Okay.
not buy the
Wow.
ETFs.
Okay. Wow.
Right.
Cool.
And then the risk, depending on, of course, how they're structured, I'm assuming the risk profile of these is going to look a lot like a leap option, right? An extremely long-term leap option in the form of a preferred. So it's going to have a risk profile that is very attractive to a institution that wants access to that has the ability to buy a preferred, but wants access to the upside in Bitcoin. And then if he throws in, we got to talk about the dividend, right? Like it's hard for me to envision him paying significant cash dividends because he's not really a cash flowing. The Bitcoin Treasury company is not really a cash flowing company. But I could see him throwing in a dividend of a PIK, and a PIK is a PIK, payment in kind, meaning the dividend is paid in additional MicroStrategy shares.
When are we supposed to hear the fine details? Does that come out next week, or when do we really learn the specifics?
Well, we don't know. I guess when there's actually an offering, we'll see
Okay.
the pure
The
specifics.
perspective. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So is that what he was referring to? Because I've heard him mention there about a dividend a few times. So he was referring to actually giving them shares, not Bitcoin. Because I was like, how would you give the people Bitcoin? The announcement says special dividend rights. It does not say in cash, in kind, etc.
Well,
Could it be Bitcoin?
there's
I
a
know.
lot
Is
of
that possible?
Mm.
It could be also be nothing. It says that it may, but not necessarily will include special dividend rights.
Right.
so there's a lot of
But it
generic language
theoretically
in here.
it could be
I
anything.
think the tax
Gotcha.
consequences of trying to give Bitcoin would be enormous. So I don't see that as being an option.
Well, it would also be contrary to the plan, right? Because
Right.
his plan is to accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible, not give it away.
Yeah. No, more likely, I think it would be a pick. Or let me throw this one at you. If he goes with the Metaplanet strategy, he could pay a cash dividend, right? And try to achieve that cash by developing an option strategy in Bitcoin itself, right? So Metaplanet is now selling naked puts in Bitcoin, right? They announced that in their last announcement I saw Dylan put out, right? So they're just going into the open market on Deribit and selling puts, taking advantage of the volatility and taking in that premium. When that premium expires and they don't have to buy and let's just assume the put expires out of the money, they take that premium and they buy Bitcoin with it. Well, he in theory could start to try to develop a cash flow strategy around selling put options in Bitcoin itself and use that cash to pay back preferred shareholder dividends. Although it's a more risky strategy. I think it's more likely that he would use a pick strategy.
Hey, Dark, is this a perpetual offering? And then my second question is, there's no doubt that this will be oversubscribed, right? I don't quite understand it, but are the market makers or I guess the behind
Underwriters, the investment banks.
the underwriters have already gone out and figured out how much demand there is out there, so that when
I,
this thing goes
I,
to
I
market, it's
don't
already oversold.
I don't know. I mean, we don't know if they've finalized the features of these securities yet, right? This is kind of this is like a Dennis Porter style announcement of an announcement. It's they intend to issue up to 2 billion of these preferred securities, but we don't know what they are. Maybe they know in the back end, or their lawyers know, and they've talked to the investment banks and they've already had this underwritten. But like this is all speculation at this point.
But when it does go to market, they'll already know what the demand is in the market prior to
Yeah,
issuing it.
and to Zach's point, very true, right? Like it is an announcement of an announcement. However, right, that's not really Saylor's MO, right? You know, his MO is to announce something and do it fairly quickly, if not very quickly. So, I mean, my suspicion, my gut instincts tell me that they've been pitched by some investment bank that they have demand for this specific product, right? And he put out this announcement to kind of prepare for it. But I would imagine that it's probably 90% done, you know, and they're just working out the details. And it goes to Puncher, you know, the Batia video you sent me, right? Like that speaks to it, right? Like the investment banks pitch the companies on specific financing arrangements before the companies really develop them.
Well, Dark, do you, I posted this, I guess a couple days old, Nick Bhatia on TFTC. A couple guys in my threads were like, this guy's too boring. But these sound like super experienced bond traders. And they basically detail how sovereigns and private, hedge funds and everything else can essentially buy MicroStrategy with not using their own cash. Can you talk to that a little bit, Dark Side? Because I still don't quite get it.
Sure. So what he was talking about was the fact that, you know, money creation, when you're on a bond desk and you want to take down a certain issue, right? It's not always that you sell something to buy something else. You're able to go out and finance it and use leverage. So you know, bond desks will tend to borrow money at, let's call it SOFR plus you know, half a point or 1 point, whatever it is, and then they go out and they buy credit that's SOFR plus 4 points. So in that case, you're only making 3 percentage points, but if you lever it 5 times, now you're making 15%, right? And that's sort of what he's getting at, is that, you know, one of his bull theses for Bitcoin is that the demand for these bonds will become so high that it will lead to constant money creation through the establishment of credit. So if I'm on a bond desk and I want access to MicroStrategy bonds, you know, I'm going to call, let's call it Citigroup, and I'm going to tell them, you know, I need $1 billion to buy this issue. They're going to cut me a loan. I'm going to buy the bond. I'm earning the difference between my borrow rate and my lending rate, right? And that's what makes the MicroStrategy bonds so attractive. You follow me, Puncher?
I got you, Dark. I got you. I'm sorry, my son jumped in and was talking to me at the same time. I apologize.
But it is, you know, people should watch that video because it's super interesting the way he lays out that, and he kind of pulls this full circle back around. Does Bitcoin compete against the dollar? And his argument is not really, because the constant credit creation that these Bitcoin bonds will create, right, do not hurt the dollar. They only help the dollar.
Yeah, the two takeaways I took from it, and again, I'm going to listen to it a time or two again just to get the mechanics down, is that it's kind of a no-brainer. If you can borrow and you can capture the yield between what you're borrowing at and what do these instruments typically yield, it's a perpetual money machine that just feeds on itself, and it actually strengthens the system by integrating Bitcoin into the whole complex.
Exactly. Exactly. Bitcoin becomes sort of a core collateral inside of these ever expanding systems of debt, of credit creation.
Yeah, so it's not a rotation out of bonds or out of any other vehicle into Bitcoin. It's just an integration of Bitcoin into an ever expanding again, complex or market.
Right. And he uses the example of Broadcom, right? Broadcom wants to issue $15 billion of debt. It does not mean that people need to go out and sell $15 billion of existing bonds that they hold. What it really means is that the money center banks will create $10 billion in new dollars so that people can lever up to buy the Broadcom bonds, right? It's not a zero sum game, it's a credit expansion game, right? And it all comes back to just the repo market, just continue, you continue to grow and grow and grow the money supply.
But is that adding fragility and risk into the system, or I, where does this all go?
Well, one would argue no, because the risk profile of the bond market is so low, right? And as long as you can continue to borrow money, the risk of the system failing is very low because they just issue new bonds to pay off old bonds. Right, as long as the system can just keep going up and up and up, and how do bonds fail in an environment where you can always borrow new money?
Right. So I look at it from two ways. Is it bullish for Bitcoin? Wildly bullish, because it just is. If you understand what's going to happen potentially. And by the way, that's on the company level, the private equity level, the sovereign level. They can all play this game. But then, what does it do to the overarching market? And it sounds like it kind of girders the market a little bit with a pristine collateral asset.
Yeah, I think it's very bullish for Bitcoin. It's wildly bullish for MicroStrategy, which has been, look, this has been the argument Gary and I have been making for a while, right? Is that there's no other company in the world that can borrow zero recourse, can take zero recourse debt at a 0% coupon. That if you can name one, I'm happy to hear it. But I've never heard of a single entity anywhere in the world that can take zero coupon debt with zero coupon non-recourse debt. That's something new to me. Zach, have you ever heard of? Can you name a single other entity in the world that can do that?
Zach's up. You're still on mute, Zach.
Sorry, I missed the question.
Yeah, can you name it? We were just talking about the that these kind of bond and preferred issues become bullish for Bitcoin, wildly bullish for MicroStrategy. And it kind of goes back to what Gary and I were talking about, is that we can't think of a single institution anywhere in the world that can take non-recourse 0% zero coupon debt. Can you think of any institution in the world that can do that?
Um, I don't know that anyone's necessarily thought to do it in that way, right? It seems like that's just a function of the incredible volatility on the MicroStrategy equity because it's a levered play on Bitcoin. I don't, I mean, like, and that's allowed Michael Saylor to do this incredible amount of leverage on the company on top of that to buy Bitcoin. I don't know if that's like a one-to-one comparison with how wildly bullish it is. I also, I mean, look, I'm made no secret, I'm not like the biggest MicroStrategy bull in the world. I think it could go
He might be the
way
biggest
higher.
bear on MicroStrategy in the world.
No, I'm
Well,
not a bit like, I don't know. I just think like we need to. There are different ways to interpret the stuff that's going on, and like I'm not sure. Like, look, that maybe these preferred shares are like wildly bullish and that it's going to unlock new capital. But I think we also need to take into consideration that this could be a negative sign. Like there is a way to look at this and be like, if they could just keep selling common stock in the amount they wanted, they would keep doing that because all things being equal, that's better for common shareholders.
Well, I think the
I think you could make the argument that the same would have been true for the ATM and the convertible notes. Like it's negative for MicroStrategy common shareholders because they're doing something different than they were before. It's kind of a silly way to think about things. You need to really wait and see how things unfold before you can
No, of course.
truly
That's why
assess.
I'm agnostic.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's bearish. I'm just saying there is a world in which it is bearish, and we don't know
Yeah.
whether that is true or not.
But Teddy, have you
Yeah.
watched that video by any chance? It's posted in the Nest. Uh, it sounds like you haven't, which is fine. But I guess the other takeaway from that is that this probably didn't germinate inside of MicroStrategy. It was probably the bond guys going out to Sailor saying, "Hey, we think this would be an interesting play or an interesting vehicle, and we've already got the buyers for it. So you,
We know that Michael Saylor's philosophy is sell your shares, sell everything you can have, lever up the stuff you own, do everything to buy Bitcoin. And so, like, this seems like a natural step in the progression. Like, if you run a large public company, what are the things that you can sell? You can sell products and services. They're doing that, but their business was declining. That's why Michael Saylor found Bitcoin in the first place, is because their operating business is not like crushing it. But they certainly use that money to buy Bitcoin and to pay the interest on their debt. You can sell equity in the company. They've been doing that in terms of common shares, right? The ATM sales, the various offerings of equity. You can sell debt. They've been very wildly successful selling debt. And what are the other things you can sell once you've sold the shares? You know, you're going to sell the tables, and the table here are preferred shares. They've not done an offering of preferred shares. It's another arrow they're pulling out of the quiver. Again, like, it could be a sign that this is just putting the boosters on here. It could be a sign that you've run out of shares to sell and now you have to sell the table. And I think once we see the feature of these preferred shares, that will give us a much bigger hint of which of those realities we're in.
yeah, but I guess once again, the idea, especially in this video, was that these were not things that like MicroStrategy came up with. Maybe some of it, maybe the converts were, but the street came to them and continues to come to them. So it's not like there's no more demand for the converts. There's no more demand for the at the monies. There is demand for those things, but this is yet another vehicle that the street came to MicroStrategy and said, if you do this, we have buyers for this type of instrument, this type of vehicle. So it's just another thing in a
Look,
series.
I don't even know if what Puncher is saying is necessarily true or not, to Zach's point. Like, whether or not he came up with the idea or somebody at MicroStrategy came up with the idea, or, Wall Street came to him and said, hey, look, like, this is another great way for you to raise capital and we could be on the other side of the trade. Like, either could be true. I think really the the fact of the matter is it's irrelevant.
Yeah. Hey,
If there is demand,
go ahead and finish your thought,
for the
Eddie.
products,
Go ahead.
yeah, if there is demand for the products, then he will use them. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, that's
Hey,
the most
Well,
simplest form.
it does
hang
matter,
on,
Jeremy.
Puncher. Hang on one
I,
second here. We gonna welcome Fred to the stage. Get him maybe up to speed on what we're talking about. Guess what, Fred? It's MicroStrategy. So we're talking about the
Oh, the preferred,
surprise. Yeah, the
the
preferred. So
preferred
that
all day
we
long.
don't really know
all the
anything about.
vehicles.
But one of the things I wanted to throw out there to the roundtable is the potential negatives or bearish signs. I know we always just hear about, the bullish stuff and how this is going to be amazing. What are the potential downsides? I know that there's probably not many people in here that actually think they exist, but I always like to see both sides. So I don't know, Fred.
Well, I'd like to throw out
Yeah,
one of the downsides, right?
yeah,
Okay. So, first of all, the downside to me is they're doing this because what they're doing right now isn't necessarily working, right? And I'd say, why is it not working? Well, the share price is down, right? So, the multiple is down and the share price is down. So, I think the fact that they're trying something new here is a little bit like, okay, why are you trying something new? And
Well, Fred,
I
that's where you broke into the conversation here.
okay,
We're saying that instead of these ideas germinating inside of MicroStrategy and their C-suite, this is the street, and I posted it in
no,
our
look,
meeting.
100% agreed, 100% Puncher.
Streets
Look,
coming to them saying,
no,
"Hey,
no,
we
look,
want."
I mean, that that was stuff that I did. I came up with some of these things back in the day, and we proposed them to our clients, and the clients did them. That's the way Wall Street works, right? Uh, so I agree, but what I'm trying to say is, I think they had really hit on a sweet spot. Like, if you go back and listen to what Saylor said about, let's say, 2 months ago, he was like, "We got it figured out. We found the glitch in the system. We can infinitely scale this thing, right?" And what he implied was this exact thing with these convertible notes can be infinitely scaled. Now he's sort of saying, well, we can do these other things too. Like maybe we can't keep on selling out the monies anymore. Maybe that's done, for now, right? Um, And maybe we have to look at these alternative things. Now, I'm not saying it's completely negative, because maybe they're going to find some new pool of new instrument that finds a home and allows them to sell even more. But the first thing I would say is this thing is kind of, it hit a little bit of an air pocket, fasten your seatbelts, ladies and gentlemen, we're going down. And there was a little bit of that this last month.
Yeah, I think there are two bearish things. One is I think what Fred said, which is like I don't think I think there's a good argument to me at least that you wouldn't sell preferred shares if you didn't have to, right? So they're having to go up the capital stack in terms of things to sell. So that's one possibility. It's not definitely true, but that's a possibility. The other is like we'll have to see what features these preferred shares have, but like they could be features that undermine in some ways how you would value the common shares. You're raiding the capital stack. Like for if we look at the different
And
features,
Zach,
just say yeah.
just to your point, right? Like as a guy, I've had 10 exits, right? And I got to tell you, a lot of the time, I'm stuck with a lot of common shares, right? And so when somebody starts issuing all kinds of new preferreds in front of me, I start getting very, very nervous, right?
Yeah, it's
Well,
different
it's not a traditional
in
business. He's not
I
it's
understand
different
it's
in like
different.
in
scalping the
the
business.
private world, right? Where
Yeah,
you're really
I agree.
oftentimes you're looking for a specific like exit, like M&A. It's hard to imagine who would acquire MicroStrategy at this size. But like, all right, let's look at just the features they talk about these shares might have in the announcement. So the first obvious one is liquidation preference. So that matters if you're in a startup and an acquisition. Here, it's hard to imagine acquisition, so it'd have to be some other liquidation, right? If the company is insolvent, whatever. So now, like, okay, the convertible debt are not necessarily secured by all of the Bitcoin. And so you could say in a world where MicroStrategy dissolves, like there will be some value for common shareholders. Well, if you start creating senior preferred classes of shares that are senior in liquidation preference to common, that takes away some of that downside protection of the value of the Bitcoin in the NAV. If you have upside stuff, right? Let's say that Michael Saylor comes up with a genius business strategy to monetize his Bitcoin hoard. He becomes a Bitcoin bank. It becomes, a really profitable business. Having perpetual preferred shares that never need to be converted unless the shareholder wants into common that have dividend rights, that takes away some of the upside from the common shares, right? They're going to get a revenue share on whatever this business model Michael Saylor is able to come up with the Bitcoin hoard. So that could be bearish in some sense for the common shares. Redemption rights, right? Like if there are certain milestones that if they are hit, the company will agree to buy back the preferred shares at the option of the preferred shareholders a certain valuation, right? That the company will be contractually obligated to buy back those shares. That could cause a liquidity crunch down the road, right? There could be, the convertibility to common shares. It could be at a 1-to-1. That's probably the base case, but it also could be that there's some level of like anti-dilution, where if the share prices fall a certain amount, the preferred shares convert to multiple common shares per preferred share. So we don't really know what the features are yet, but like it is possible if we're looking at just what are the bearish cases you can make, each of the features that are mentioned in that announcement could be seen as taking away some of the fundamental value of the common stock.
But the only thing that really matters is where you are in the capital stack. Is if this thing goes sideways, are you going to get some
No,
vested
the example I
interest?
gave of the dividend rights is it matters in a very optimistic scenario too.
Okay, but essentially, unless Bitcoin goes sideways, MicroStrategy is not going to go sideways. I don't think that Saylor's trying to exit. I mean, by the way, he owns a ton of common shares, so he'd only be screwing himself. And I guess the point was that Wall Street is coming to them and saying, not that the other issues weren't working. Maybe the ATMs weren't working because that's why the price was getting hammered so much, so the stock price. But this is just another arrow that somebody like Fred 2.0, who's now on Wall Street, came to MicroStrategy and said, why don't you try this? And they said, yeah, that sounds good too. It's
Right,
different. It's another arrow in that
Puncher,
quiver.
I mean, here's the sort of say, why don't you try this? Is more like, hey, if you want to do this, we can sell it. It doesn't say this will be good for your business, right? It's sort of like we think we can sell this product, and so I think they're kind of in the phase of, let's see, is there appetite or not, right? But I'm a little
Well,
bit
doesn't the street already tell
apprehensive
them there's
about having
appetite?
different classes of shares and stuff. Like if
Yeah, Fred, doesn't the street
I'm
already
a
tell them
common
there's
shareholder now, so like I'm sort of going, there's these preferred shares and they have better right. They have some other rights in front of me. Okay, What does that do to me?
Yeah, hey Teddy, you had your hand up. You want to go?
Yeah, I was just making a tweet there. Just in response to what Zach said, like the first point that he made as far as a potential negative, and I really just think that Saylor is doing what he specifically outlined his intention was to do, and that is keep all of the different people who are helping make MicroStrategy the company that it has become in the front of his mind, right? So he has to think about the the people who are giving him the convert money. He has to think about the common shareholders. He has to think about these different groups. He can't just think about what's the maximum best way for him to allocate or to get cash from anyone in order to acquire more Bitcoin. Like he could technically suck the common shareholders dry and dilute in a crazy like way crazier than he just did, and common shareholders would be like, well, what the fuck, right? So he did a very aggressive ATM to acquire more Bitcoin, which is advantageous at a Bitcoin per share status, which is what most people are focusing on. And he tapped the convert market for a very small amount of money so far, right? There's obviously still plans to continue to hit the convert market as they become available or as he wants to based on some sort of schedule for future converts, right? And I think that part of it is, the market has a certain amount of capital that they want to give. And I think another part of it is he wants certain levels of converts at different prices. And then he also wants payback periods at certain points. So like he didn't want to have too much money front loaded in one quarter in an instance where 5 years out from now, everything, all 21 billion is in one quarter. That would be a more of a risk of a situation to pay back if they were in that situation. Now, believing they will be or not, you have to believe in kind of Bitcoin going up over 4 year durations. But I think that this is just another way for him to show common shareholders, I am thinking about the share price of MicroStrategy, of common shareholders benefit by doing this, opposed to continuing to hammer the ATM, opposed to going to the convert market. This is a new strategy. And really, so the tweet that I just put out, it was a bit sloppy because I just hit post to come back on the call. But I think that this is a way to tap into the fixed income cohort. So we
So
heard him say
let
that.
me use an analogy. I think it explains this ATM point. Like, let's
Sure.
use like a private market analogy that doesn't have to do with Bitcoin. Let's say that like I am an AI startup, right? I'm a Series B startup. I need to raise capital for my Series C, and let's say I own a bunch of GPUs, right? And that's like pretty good collateral because the market for H100s or whatever is very hot right now, and so I have a bunch of like actual like chips sitting around. I can either raise at a $5 billion valuation because I'm really hot for my Series C. Um, you know, just selling common shares in the company. I know that's not how VC really works, but I can. That's how much dilution I will have to take. I'll have to raise $1 billion at a $5 billion valuation, or I can raise $1 billion at a $10 billion valuation by giving downside protection to my investors by giving preferred shares that have a liquidation preference because I won't have to dilute the company as much because that downside protection of selling the GPUs, right? The liquidation value makes the investors feel safer in the investment because they're protected by their claim on the assets and therefore they're willing to take less upside. And so that is I might take that deal as even as the sort of founder of this AI company that holds common shares. I want less dilution because it'll be punishing dilution from having to sell enough common shares to raise the amount of money that I want. I think that's basically what we're seeing here, right? Preferred shares come with some downside protection relative to the Bitcoin that MicroStrategy holds. Those are like the H100s in this analogy.
Yeah, but
And
common
so
shares, Zach,
you're able to
common
sell
shares.
equity with less dilution, but that means that investors are looking at the downside to some extent, right? Like I think
Well,
that might be the signal we're getting.
Zach, let me give you the contrary argument, right? Normally, you would say the same thing about bond investors, but in this case, in the MicroStrategy case, these bond investors have non-recourse debt, right? So to think that he's going to take these preferred shareholders and give them recourse over and above his bondholders, I think is a little bit ludicrous. So I think that these are being structured as preferreds because the market is demanding a preferred security, meaning a security that they can invest in, right? Because it's a preferred security. But if you think he's going to give the preferred shareholders better rights than he's going to give the bondholders, you're missing something. Like
Yeah,
I think
Doc,
most like here,
the
let me
street, the
just
street
finish. I
seems
think
convinced.
most likely what we're looking at is exactly what um Fred and I had put out about a month ago. This is going to be structured as a warrant, and it's going to be dressed up as a preferred. That I'm almost certain that's what you're going to see. And the reason for doing this is quite simple. It's a way better deal for the MicroStrategy shareholder than just selling at the money. That was the argument we made over a month ago. Was, hey,
And some
why are
smart,
you selling at the money when you could sell warrants? Right? Warrants are just a better deal.
That's I think what's going to happen with this is you're going to see them exhaust the 21 million. There, I think 7 million to go, and then you're going to see this
Billion.
at the money. This is going to be the way they're going to replace the and you're going to kick the can down the road on dilution issues and whether this is a good deal for the common holder. That could be 10, 12 years out from now. And it really depends on the capital structure and the terms. But you could graduate the conversion. You could really make this. When you look at what's the value of a warrant that has a small coupon and is good for 10 years. It's a significant amount. Well, that money accretes to the common today, where they can use that capital that comes in to buy Bitcoin today. And what's not priced into the marketplace for any of these calculations is Saylor's belief that we are going to have a 21-year market that with a 29% base case CAGR. Um, so he believes that he's convinced his board, and he's going to set structures up that capitalize on that. Now, whether that happens or not, and we get to a $13 million price in 2045, I don't know. But that's what he put forward. I think there's a possibility of that, and you can see them, saying, "Hey, this at the money, it hit too hard right now. Let's kick the can down the road. Let's take this money, put it to the side, buy some Bitcoin, and grow the share price." Because that hit on the share price from the spike up to over little 500. I know it was only momentarily, back down to 300, and now it's 340. That also makes it hard for them to do their bond offerings, the convertible bond offerings, because that extreme volatility really can spook people in terms of what the convert ratio is going to be. I think the last one was 55%. They should really start moving that percentage out some, in my opinion.
I have two questions for the smart bond guys here. Number one, isn't it more probable that some smart young Fred Krueger came to MicroStrategy and said, my clients currently can't invest in MicroStrategy and have no access to Bitcoin, but if you structure this product this way, I can guarantee you that they'll buy it, right? Number
No,
one.
I personally don't think so. I think this was just a recognition from the inside on another, pool of capital in the market that they can tap into, being the fixed income market with a dividend, and that's what they're doing.
Well,
They've
Teddy,
created the
Dark said that
product.
a bunch of people can't. This opens up an investment into MicroStrategy and by derivation Bitcoin to people who couldn't have done it before. And then my next question is,
Yeah, I agree with that.
yeah, well, and where it generated from, whatever. I think it generated from outside of MicroStrategy by somebody who said, I can make sure that this goes off without a hitch. And then
I
secondarily,
just
if
think
they
if
keep
that were
burying
true,
if they
Hunter,
keep, go ahead.
just one quick response. If that were true, I think this wouldn't be an announcement of coming preferred. I think it would be an announcement of a 2 billion capital raise through a preferred, where the details of which were already there, because whoever came to him with clients and money at the forefront saying this is a product that we want, they would have already had the terms ready to go, and this announcement wouldn't be a suggestion unless on a very small percentage like case sailor somebody did come to him, said, look, these are the terms, this is what we want, and he said, let me put it to the market through an announcement just to kind of see the reaction I get. There is a small potential that that's the case as well, but I think that this is from the inside out, and he just has found another pool of
Teddy, you make
capital
a
to
really
tap
good
into.
point. That is, it's very odd to see an announcement as vague as this. Don't you think?
Yeah, I do think that's the case. Even if you read the language, like it does state that this might not happen, right? Like this is, if it happens, it will happen. There, in common, language, right? So there is still the chance that this doesn't happen at all. And if it doesn't happen at all, then I think it gives even more credence to the idea that this was from MicroStrategy on the inside out. And will it happen? I do give it a high probability, because I think that there is a large percentage of fixed income money that, just like the convert issuers, or the convert buyers will be interested in this as a potential way to get access exposure to MSTR Bitcoin through MSTR, while maintaining some sort of fixed income, which is how they typically invest.
But
And you
Teddy,
could
I don't want to
argue
put
like,
words in your mouth, but you say if it does happen, you think it came from outside more than likely. If it doesn't happen, you think it germinated inside of MicroStrategy.
I wouldn't say that. I would just say that more likely it came from inside if it doesn't happen. I couldn't imply that the opposite is true. Like really, there's no way for us to know unless it's actually stated.
Fair enough. And Dark might have a different opinion. He said that earlier. But my next question is, if they continue to do things like the ATMs that hammer the common the common share price, wouldn't that ultimately take away a lot of the attractiveness and volatility, because this thing keeps getting hammered down and down and down with no real upside as they keep hitting ATMs, and then kind of destroy the whole complex? I mean, one of the things he's selling, the
Yeah.
biggest thing is volatility.
Yeah, but downside volatility is also a benefit to these converts, right? Like people might argue against that if they think that it's going to zero, it's not a benefit. But like if the trade for convert money, the person giving the money to MicroStrategy in the set of a convert is just simply arbitraging the trade, they like downside as much as they like upside. Really, it doesn't matter. What they want to see is they want to see volatility. So this aggressive nature ATM, the only person I see that being a negative to is common shareholders who don't have conviction in MicroStrategy in a long-term position, right? People that are trading short-term options, got fucking wiped. It is what it is. Like Michael Saylor never said go out and buy short-term options on my stock. He actually specifically indicated that, in a different interview, that sometimes people buying options might not have a big win, whereas if they had just bought the stock, they would have done way better. So I think that there's still too many unknowns to really speculate on this more than we kind of already have. But I'm interested to see if it does take shape, and then how it takes shape, and if it ends up being kind of a targeted product for this fixed income, pool of capital. That's another huge pool of capital that is otherwise untapped by MicroStrategy right now, and I think it gives it a lot more upside potential.
Yeah, so Teddy, I agree with you. One really salient point you made is that downside volatility is a huge benefit to convertible bond holders, right? That's where they get to trade out and trade back in of their delta position. Secondly, my my position on this is that they, I think the street came to him and said there's tremendous demand for a preferred that trades on an exchange as opposed to a bond that trades by appointment. Okay, so I think that was the message that came from the street, and I think the announcement is a mechanism of trying to price it. So by making this announcement, he's basically telling the street, "Come show me your best deal." Right? And now you're going to have every investment banking house on the street putting together what they think would be the best deal they could offer MicroStrategy in the form of a preferred. So that's how I see this announcement. I think it's definitely going to happen. I think he's just using these kind of loosely described terms as a way to go ahead and see, okay, show me your best deal.
Almost like he's, kind of like doing a roadshow presentation for taking a company public, and he's like, okay, what do you got, Goldman? What do you got for me, Morgan Stanley? What do you got for me? It's almost like that.
Exactly, Fred. Exactly. And smart too, right? Like, I mean, the reality is he has the product that everybody wants, and he's acting like it, right? Like, oh, this is a brilliant announcement. I mean, he might as well just tee them all up and say, "Go ahead, go to work, guys. Show me what you got." I'll be in the office Tuesday and Wednesday, and I'll take meetings all day. Let's see what you got. But I'm going to remind everybody what I said earlier. There's absolutely zero chance, in my personal opinion, that he's going to offer the preferred shareholders a better deal than the bondholders. And the bondholders have a non-recourse deal, which means that the preferred shareholders are going to end up with a non-recourse deal.
What do you mean? You mean like actual secured by the Bitcoin?
No, the bondholders have non-recourse. Meaning the money they're giving him, the only advantage they have is that they're senior in a liquidation, and that will be the same condition that will be set for the preferred holders. If he puts in any type of advantageous ownership rights, as you were mentioning, Zach, then he would actually be making the preferred shareholders senior to the bondholders,
But
right? And
you're
he's not
specifically
going to
talking about recourse to the underlying Bitcoin.
recourse to anything. Like yes,
Or
well, I
fine,
mean,
but like
it's a
that's what
Bitcoin treasury company, so yes, I guess we
but
could
that's
say
but that's
that.
what the
But
capital stack is, right? It is legal recourse, right? It is how senior are you in the event of liquidation? Like that is relevant to the valuation of these things. And
but
yes,
but
like
but
preferred
that's
will
the
be
only
junior
that.
to bonds and senior to common.
But my point is, there's not going to be any additional benefits other than just simply that, right?
Well,
Like,
he
and that's
mentioned
that.
he
If
mentioned two or three other potential benefits. He mentioned special dividends. He mentioned convertibility. We don't know at what rate, and he mentioned redemption rights.
right, and he's asking the street to go ahead and show them your best deal. All of those are standard characteristics of a preferred offering,
Given
right?
that
So
there are
that
no details here, if he didn't intend to offer those things, why would you possibly put those in the pre-announcement? Why would you signal that those are on the table if your best deal doesn't include them?
I think he just outlined the standard characteristics of preferred offerings, and he's going to see what comes in. But look, if he gives the preferred shareholders an advantageous position to the bondholders, he'll never sell another bond again, and he knows it. So that's just not going to
Look, I,
happen.
I work on I work on like venture capital preferred financings all the time. If we are not going to offer investors a certain right, best believe the company is not going to mention the possibility of those features in an email to the prospective investor. Like I don't buy that they would include these things if like they're off the table in the announcement. Like that wouldn't make any sense. Why would you make the security like dramatically worse than the pre-announcement of the security?
He didn't pre-announce a security.
He did look
No,
at the
it's a
announcement of this offering. He
pre-announced.
talks about
Yeah,
specific features that you're saying there's no chance
I
they'll have.
understand. Okay, well, I'm
I mean,
telling you right
it's
now,
just in the announcement.
there's
You can
no
look at the
way
announcement.
there's no way he's going to shoot his bondholders in the head and shoot any
Oh,
future
it won't
bond
be it
deals
won't
in
be
the
senior
head.
to bondholders in terms of liquidation preference, but it may well have other rights, and it doesn't need to be senior to bondholders to be in some ways bearish for common holders.
Yeah, the rights
Well,
that the preferred will have over the common are going to be effectively useless, in my opinion, unless MicroStrategy goes bankrupt. That
exactly.
those are
And
my thoughts.
that's exactly, Teddy. That's the
And
exact point I'm trying to make.
from Michael Saylor's point of view, right? That is only going to happen if Bitcoin faces some extinction type event.
I
And
mean, but Teddy, if we go
maybe
through the
he's
rights he
wrong.
mentions, right? Let's test your proposition for each of them. In terms of
Sure.
liquidation preference, I agree with you. I don't think that MicroStrategy is getting bought, and so I think the liquidation preference is only relevant in bankruptcy or insolvency. So
Okay,
there,
so
I agree.
next. We both agree there.
In
Next.
terms of redemption rights, like it depends what the redemption rights are. Those may or may not come into play in an optimistic case.
Yeah, so
I
as I
tend
said
to
to
think that
you
probably I
before
agree with you there too.
yesterday, so as I said to you before yesterday, a future dilution is better than a current dilution.
Well, hold on, Teddy. Let's just go through each of these rights because like some of them I agree with you. I probably agree with you with regard to redemption rights too. Like probably if things are going really well, at least like the preferred shareholders are not going to, redeem or be bought out by the company or exercise that right if they want to keep holding the equity. Now, the dividend rights, if there are dividend rights, that is somewhere where I definitely disagree with you, right? If the preferred shares come with special dividend rights, that just is relevant even in an optimistic scenario, and it takes
No,
away some
not
of the upside from
necessarily.
common
It's not.
shares.
It's not. Like Fred had mentioned a potential proposed, way to do the preferred where of the 2 billion, let's say 400 million were put in a cash account to pay dividends into the future. And the same way he re-rolls these converts, he would be able to do with perpetual preferreds. So that dividend is actually paid out of a portion of the cash.
Right. I
And
think, Teddy, I think the big question is this is the big question, which we don't know. Will this preferred, right? It is going to be a preferred. Will this preferred have a dividend, a meaningful dividend? That
yeah,
that's the
I think
biggest
the answer
question,
is
in my
yes.
opinion.
If it does, it might be a pick, and that doesn't hurt anybody.
I just think that it will, and again, I just mentioned this before, and it's the tweet that I talked about at the top that I just made. I think that this is tapping into the fixed income market. Like fixed income is a
Wait, Teddy,
huge
before
pool
we
of
go there, I'm
capital.
sorry. That how is a pick not hurt anybody? How does that work? Is it a perpetual motion machine? It's free money.
No, it's look. The question is it a better performing
Well, no, no. But
security
let's so by pick now
than
a
the
payment in
at the
kind.
money?
A payment in
Yeah,
kind can
so
be
payment in
anything
kind, he's
other
going to
than
issue more.
cash. Let's just like start from first
No,
principles, right? Payment in
again,
kind
let me be
is
clear. A
any
pick
dividend that's
meaning
not held.
micro strategy shares.
Right. So let's
Okay.
assume that you're right, and specifically the pick is new MicroStrategy shares, and there is a right to a dividend of MicroStrategy shares. You are creating perpetual dilution of the equity that only inures to the benefit of the preferred shareholders that have that right to receive that dividend in kind in MicroStrategy shares. That absolutely comes at the cost of
Yeah,
common
but the
shareholders.
preferred
Absolutely.
Zach, the preferred shares also trade at a different rate than
Of
the common.
course. Of course.
Yeah, so the upside is lost by the preferred. So if it's less volatile to the upside, do the
No,
common
no, it would
shareholders
be it would
really
be better to the
care?
upside because you're getting more equity in the company every time
No,
there's a payment in kind dividend.
Here's
no,
the
no.
problem,
Just
Teddy.
because
Though
you get a dividend doesn't mean it's going to be better to the upside. You
here's
could
the
have less price appreciation in the value of the preferreds because it's getting a dividend. Like if a percentage of the money is used, and preferreds trade separate from
Preferred
common.
these in kind dividends are the equivalent of like staking of a crypto coin, right? Like you get more upside because you have more of the coin when you stake it.
Unless it doesn't trade at par with the other share,
But it should trade at least at par because it's convertible into common
or
and
at
it has
par
all
less
those
the
same rights
at
plus
par
more.
less the dividend. Like it could trade close to, but a lot of the time preferred are less volatile in both directions, to the downside and the upside, because of these benefits.
It should be less
Yeah, if
volatile to the downside because of liquidation preference. To the upside, it should get certainly in this world where this like there's this payment in kind dividends in MicroStrategy shares that Darkside is envisioning. It should have more upside. It should just strictly
I
be a
I
much
think
better,
that
more
they
valuable security than the
it
common.
depends. Hey Zach, it depends on where the conversion price is. So if the conversion price is, let's say, at $1,000 a share, and the redemption is on the company's on the company's choice, right? That kind of, I think that if I'm a common shareholder, I like that deal better than I like the ATM deal. It's more creative to me.
in the short
I
If the
term, it's
and,
very
preferred
and
creative.
shares are redeemable at the company's choice, if they can just rug
well,
you
of course they're
and buy
going.
you out.
Dude, look at the bond deals. They're not if they can just
We're
rug
talking
you.
about an equity
Zach,
security, not a bond.
Zach. He's not gonna make the preferred deals better than the bond deals. They're going to be very similar, right? Like he can't. He's trying to create securities that fit different markets. If you've listened to him, that's what he talks about. He wants to create securities that work for everybody in the in the in the financial in the TradFi world. A preferred security works for a different investor than a convertible bond deal does. So
Guys,
so
I
he's
just
not
want to
going to.
point one thing out though. He does, if they do pay in kind dividends, whatever he does, he's got to make sure that Bitcoin yield sort of story does not derail, right? Because right now he's got a very good thing that I have 70% more Bitcoin than I had in January of 2024, right? So
Well,
he's added 70%. Now, if somebody can make the argument that you're sacrifice that actually by doing pay in kind with the preferreds or something, that this is going to start reversing that trend, I think that's a problem. So I think
yeah,
whatever
but
he does, he needs to make sure that yield story stays intact.
well, Fred, think about the yield of selling at the money stock, right, and buying Bitcoin, and then think about the yield of selling a preferred with a $1,000 conversion price and a 3% pay in kind dividend, right? Like, I mean, it's crazy, right? Like in this,
No,
in the pref,
you're probably right. Look, I haven't done the math on the.
it's not even close.
Yeah, no, you're
It's a
right. Look, I mean,
huge, huge win.
at the end of the day, I think. Well, I think he could probably do even a higher dividend. Maybe it's even 5%. But it's the
Yeah.
optics of this thing are look, if he can offer a 5% dividend, and he can either do it a pay in kind or pay in maybe it's pay in kind or dollars at his option, right? And he takes some of the proceeds and just puts it in cash and doesn't put all of it in Bitcoin. And like we were talking with Teddy, I think that's kind of a win-win because now all of a sudden he's given these kind of you know preferred type investors something that they're more comfortable with, and that pays them a dividend, right? And all of a sudden, uh, he hasn't uh, he's not hitting the market. Even with the converts, you're going to get the people like hedging, doing the delta hedge. Here, he might just be really placing the paper,
If
and
he
that
sequesters the proceeds from the preferred sales in a special purpose vehicle, special purpose entity, he can carve off a good chunk of that and give it to the common shareholders because they're never going to need it. Invest that special purpose vehicle in Bitcoin, and then pay out the dividends in perpetuity to the preferred shareholders. And at some point in the future, they can convert over some astronomical price. That is absolutely better than at the ATM. It's
no, I agree. And by the way, Michael Saylor, if you're listening anonymously, that could be a good idea for your stock. Thank you.
He's listening, Fred. I always invite him to these, and in my mind, he's one of those anons down there.
I put a spreadsheet out just that plays around with this, and I used a Bitcoin in kind. That may be like a transgression that could never be done, but you could do it in cash. You don't have to do it in Bitcoin. But the numbers I ran, you could essentially start with a 5% coupon in fiat terms, and even grow it up to 10%. And over 20 years, you've only paid out a quarter of the preferred value. Now, the real issue is going to be what is a dividend paying warrant? Essentially, what this is. What's that worth? What are you going to price it at? Because that has a lot to do with the future capital dilution if those ever convert over, and the terms of that conversion. So
Hey,
I
can
don't
we
have.
try to get? Let's try to get Joe up here. Sorry to talk over you, Thomas. I hate to be Debbie Downer here, but this conversation is completely and utterly boring to me because it just seems like a bunch of hypotheticals and a bunch of people's opinions, and until we really get the fine details, we're just speculating. So I really don't see how 700 people can be that interested in this crap. So I'd love Joe to come up here and just swing some haymakers around. And I've actually really appreciated Zach's opinion. Zach, thank you. This conversation has made me want to shrink my micro strategy stack even more. So and I'm not I'm pro MicroStrategy. I'm not trying to be a bear or anything, but I don't know, guys. We'll see when it all comes out. A lot of good points on both sides, but I mean, we have beat this horse. There's just no more shit left in this horse. You can only beat.
Hey, Lauren, can I
Yeah,
say something as Joe is
please,
coming up?
please help us out. Yeah,
Along with what Fred said about if sailors listening, for what it's worth, Grant Cardone did make a comment that he knows for a fact that billionaires and powerful politicians who we all know do listen to our spaces. So take that for what it's worth.
yeah. I'm not impressed with. We're all just people, and that's one of the things I like about Bitcoin is Sats, which my pink shirt buddy guy made up. All souls are the same, so we're all the same, and that's one of the beauties of the Bitcoin network. We all mean the same. I have friends and no billionaires, and spent this part of the holiday season in a billionaire's house. Whoopity doo dah. Was a
No,
part
I'm
of it.
just saying the mechanics
Yeah,
of
no,
it
no, I get it.
is
I
kind
get
of
it
interesting for people to
for
understand how it
sure,
works.
for sure. No, I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer and pee on the parade here. It's just I think we've really, especially over the day, since this was announced, we've had space after space after space on this, and it's good stuff. I mean, it's honestly, Michael's playing a fiat game and kicking the crap out of it. And yeah, over time, it's going to be a winner. I definitely am a Bitcoin and cold storage guy, but I'm not trying to say, oh, you're going to miss these gains and da 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 da. I support all of you guys in your quest to make gains and in the gym and in MicroStrategy. So, kudos to you guys. But personally, like I said, I want to sell more now just because I'm like, oh God, I'm kind of over it. So Bitcoin to me is the true sovereignty. It's the true freedom tech. It's the true revolution. And I don't give a shit if I miss some short-term fiat gains because of it. But that's where my conviction lies is with Bitcoin in cold storage. So for me, I love hearing and I love talking, I love speculating and all this other stuff, but if we do it so long, it just kind of becomes tedious and a little bit boring. So I'll get off the soapbox. Joe, get up here. Swing some haymakers, buddy. I think I just sucked all the wind out of the room. Sorry. Fred, you're off mute. Oh, you're off the stage.
Yeah, Fred saw Joe was coming up, and like me, he thought it was a good time to leave.
He's like, I'm
Just
out.
kidding, Joe. We love you. We love you, Joe.
Well, it'd be entertaining. No, I've appreciated all the talk. It's just we hit points where we were actually going around in circles, and we were recovering some of the same things for the third time, which a lot of it was
No, I
speculation.
wasn't.
And
I wasn't downing what you were
okay,
saying. I
okay,
was on
good.
the board of
I just felt like I
the
was Debbie
conversation too.
Downer. So yeah,
Like I actually take a pretty similar stance as Zach, and I appreciate his outlook on this stuff too. It's funny that that's the case because it leads me to be extremely bullish on MicroStrategy through the lens of a potential downside situation. Like I consider the downside when looking at MicroStrategy as a long term or even short term trade, either one, right? Investment or trade, either one. So it's always good to kind of have those thoughts in your head, and it lets you come to conclusions that either say this isn't for me or this is these are good things to consider, but I'm not going to get hung up on one possible negative, which I think a lot of people that are bearish do. And you have to look through the weeds to find the magic, and I think that that's what Sailors tapped into here. But as long as the market stays bullish and these things continue to work, I think MicroStrategy has a lot of upside. But yeah,
well said. Hey, Luke, are
what else
you
is there to talk about right now
all
though?
right?
It's kind of
Hey, man, this
it's
is getting
kind of
good. We're gonna
shitty.
we're gonna cross 100K again. We're gonna have another 100K party. I mean, what the hell? Luke, are you around? Or are you giving surf lessons? How are you today, Luke?
Good. How are you? No, I'm
Good.
drinking coffee.
Oh, nice. What did you derive a lot out of that whatever 40 minutes of your life that you heard listening to the MSTR chat?
Oh my God.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just, it's one of those things. There's a million reasons not to own it, but there's a lot of reasons to. Well, it's the same thing with Bitcoin. It's like, oh, what if this happens? What if that? This could be bad. It could go down. This or that. It's like, Okay, you could talk yourself out of it all day. Can we get bullish? I mean, is that too much
Well,
to
I mean,
ask?
bond guys they want to see all the potential upsides and downsides. It's why they're
I
the
think
sharpest
making
guys
a,
on the
I
street.
don't think this is a reasonable analogy. I think making a long-term bear case against Bitcoin, while possible, is much more difficult than seeing what go wrong with MicroStrategy. Like one of the amazing things about Bitcoin is like really almost all of the objections you can think of, there is a compelling answer to. And look, my view is that like I have no idea what's going to happen to the price of MicroStrategy. Like I'm not in the trade. Like I don't. It could go way higher. I have no idea. I suspect at some point in time, people are going to make a grave error by losing out on Bitcoin in favor of speculating on MicroStrategy.
What do you mean by losing out though?
Like, you know,
Like,
people who don't have the size Bitcoin position that they want, who instead are trying to chase faster gains.
Like
yeah,
you? Hold on. Like you?
No, I don't own
Well,
MicroStrategy.
I'm not saying MicroStrategy. Are you chasing faster gains?
Oh yeah, look, I also do gambling on
Okay,
the
I
side
just
on like
wanted to be
shitcoins. Yeah.
clear who we were. Just wanted to be clear who we were
No, no,
talking
no,
about.
no. Listen, like I for sure, and my gambling on shitcoins, like I do it in a small size, like I do it for fun. I don't think that that is a replacement for Bitcoin. I think some of the people who are buying MicroStrategy and leverage MicroStrategy actually do think it is a replacement for Bitcoin.
yeah. I
No,
mean,
definitely not a replacement for Bitcoin.
I don't think the people that are gonna hold it for a long time or whatever probably don't even hold Bitcoin. I don't think you can hold MicroStrategy for a long enough time for it to matter unless you had conviction about Bitcoin to begin with. You know?
Yeah,
Hey,
MicroStrategy is going to outpace
yeah,
Bitcoin, and people are going to
yeah, I
win
agree. I
until it
agree,
stops
Teddy.
happening. Just until it stops
Eh,
happening.
Yeah,
That's it.
well, the biggest bull case for MicroStrategy is the one you can't see, right? When I look at MicroStrategy, I say to myself, what is the value of owning, let's call it 1 million Bitcoin 3 years from now, right? Beyond the fact that Bitcoin's gone up or gone down or stayed level, to me, the value of that stack is not foreseeable. You have to use your imagination
So
and say to
what does your
myself, well,
imagination tell you? What does a Bitcoin hoard like that allow you to do in terms of business model?
yeah, I think there's a banking angle that we don't
That's
No,
the
see.
no,
thing that you
but
can't
what do you?
see, Zach. It's the thing you can't
Okay,
see.
but like, but
He just
let's
said that.
speculate. When you say there's a banking angle, how do you make money from having that much Bitcoin as opposed to less Bitcoin?
Well, there may be loaning Bitcoin. There may be, um, there's
Why
all
do you need that
different.
much Bitcoin to loan Bitcoin?
Well, maybe JP Morgan needs his Bitcoin.
You don't think
Maybe
that
the,
they
the,
can
the
get
large
access to
commercial.
other instruments
No,
or ways to
I
get
don't.
Bitcoin?
No,
Maybe
I
Uncle
don't.
Sam needs his
Like
Bitcoin.
I
this is an
don't.
art. I actually think this is somewhat
I think,
priced in. I think lots of people think that there is some special sauce in having the biggest Bitcoin position in the world, and maybe there is, but I've not heard someone even speculate on
look,
like here is a compelling thing you can only do if you have like
What
a
if you
million
own
Bitcoin.
the Yankees? What does pristine collateral allow you to do?
Well, no, 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 but
yeah,
it's not.
that's the answer.
Anyone can use Bitcoin as pristine collateral. It has to be there's something special about having
You,
as much Bitcoin as MicroStrategy does, and
I'm
not
just look.
less.
Yeah,
If you have one or
they
millions,
could buy America.
I've already explained to you, Zach, that you can't give me another business. You can't name one that can borrow capital at 0%
But that's happening now. That
non-recourse.
is, you're
And
shifting what we're talking about. We were talking
no,
about
but
business
no,
Zach,
models that
Zach,
become
just
non-fungible.
telling
just
you
wait
that
until MicroStrategy has enough Bitcoin to buy America, and then every single tax dollar you pay comes to us. It's the final form.
again, you have to use your imagination, Zach. I don't
For
want to
sure, I'm
get into an
asking you to use
argument
your
over it.
imagination and tell me exactly how you make money specifically by having north of half a
Uh,
million coins.
I'm not exactly sure. What I'm quite confident of is that Bitcoin will establish itself as the single best form of collateral that exists. So,
I agree
look
with
at
you,
real
but one of
estate
the
today. I
wonderful
think
things about Bitcoin is it's fungible and it follows the same rules for everyone, and you don't get any special dispensation for having more. And so I am skeptical. Like, yes, there will be companies that will want to own a
you
lot
have
of Bitcoin as
scale,
collateral.
Zach.
I
okay.
agree with that.
Wait,
I
no,
don't think there is special
that's
sauce in
just
having the
fundamental.
most.
Look, I own Bitcoin. No one's loaning me money at 0%. So that's just not true.
Well, that's not about
I
owning
mean,
Bitcoin. That's about being a
it's
volatile
just not
public
true.
stock. That they're
No,
not
no,
giving him the
no.
loan at
There's
0%
there's
because of the Bitcoin hoarders.
there's
They're doing
other
it because of the
volatile
volatility.
public. There's plenty of other volatile public companies that could not borrow non-recourse debt at 0%.
There's also
Plenty of them.
there's a point of view that not one Satoshi will cross the threshold of the MST doors on the outflow. I don't think that that's realistic forever. It doesn't even. It's almost a religious argument. Imagine a scenario where you had um, contractual swaps where you needed where you needed a large amount of Bitcoin to do anything, settle global trade. I don't even know. In which case, there you would introduce counterparty risk to the stack. That would be a deviation from where they're at today. But to suggest that not one sat will ever cross the door in the outflow forever, this seems like more of a religious argument than a fiduciary one.
Agreed, Thomas. I just think, look, it's hard to imagine what's going to happen. I mean, when Apple came out with the iPod, did anyone really see the iPhone coming? I didn't. Right? Like, just you have to. It's difficult to look into the future, but you have to. At least where I stand, I have to assign a significant value in my own head to owning the largest stack of Bitcoin and being able to take that Bitcoin and use it to generate cash flow.
But in your wildest dreams, you can't tell me what that might even look like.
Okay, I'll tell you. I don't even own any MicroStrategy. But what I think it looks like is that the fiat world falls away and the world goes onto a Bitcoin standard, and then Saylor meets with himself on Jekyll Island, and he's the king of the capital. He owns the most capital in the world. He's the pharaoh god king of the world.
Well, that's a shitty scenario.
That went over well.
Well, that's what I think the reality is, and it might not be Saylor, but it might just be MicroStrategy the entity. Say Saylor, the J.P. Morgan Rothschild king of the world. I don't know. That's just
Well, whatever the scenario is, to say that having more Bitcoin is not as powerful a position as having one Bitcoin seems ridiculous.
yeah. It's like having $1 million is better than having $1.
The
Like
question
that's
is,
just
how much better is it? Is it better pro rata to the amount of Bitcoin, or is there some special secret sauce that being the biggest Bitcoin treasury unlocks in terms of different business models?
yeah. I
Zach, are
think
you still
I think
buying Bit?
nation
Are you
I
still
think
buying
nation
Bitcoin, Zach?
states will literally come and try to borrow from Michael Saylor. I mean, I think Michael Saylor is going to be the king of the capital, the king of the world. Like he's going to have the capital to lend.
Look, and maybe that's the case, and certainly I'm very bullish on Bitcoin. And if he pulls this off and they have the most Bitcoin, that will go very well for them. I do worry a little bit about like what I hear, for example, in this space is an unwillingness to consider anything but the most bullish scenarios. And like Michael Saylor being I don't know if you're saying that ironically or not, but like you know
No,
how
I'm
that
not.
sounds.
So
I
Zach,
know
what's
how
the
it
bearish?
sounds.
We're
Zach,
speculating. Yeah.
Zach, let's look at the bearish scenario. Right, it's trading at 1.8 times MNAV. Right, it goes to MNAV. That's the bearish scenario. So if your downside is, let's call it 50%, like let's just throw a number. Your downside's 50%, and your upside is something we can't imagine the
Are we
value of that
talking
stack
relative to
being.
Bitcoin or in absolute fiat terms?
I'm not sure I understand the difference, but let's
Are we
just let's
are we
just
talking
use
about your
fiat
downside
terms, okay?
relative to holding Bitcoin, or like if it goes to MNAV and Bitcoin is at $3,000 a coin or so? I'm not saying it's gonna happen, but like you
Right,
can
but
go
so
in
if
fiat
if
terms, you
that
can go
happens, it
way
doesn't
below
matter.
50%.
I
Well, a lot of
understand.
people can't. A lot of people can't own Bitcoins. That's the point. The people who are buying MicroStrategy can't otherwise custody Bitcoin.
Look, I mean, what are the downsides? Like there could be all sorts of downsides, right? Like the whole thing could blow up. It could be that they have to sell Bitcoin and that
But
causes a cascade. And
but but Bitcoin has to blow up. In order for MicroStrategy to blow up, it has to blow up.
oh no,
Right. So
there's
let's just
absolutely idiosyncratic risk in MicroStrategy
No,
that's not in Bitcoin.
dark side.
There's
There's counterparty
there's
risk
key
for
man risk. What if something
MicroStrategy.
happens to Michael Saylor? Like there's
Yeah,
all sorts of things that
that's
could
right.
happen to MicroStrategy
I
and
think
not
there's
Bitcoin.
very little key man risk from what
No.
I understand. He's not even running the company anymore. He's just the voice of the company, and they've built in the speaking to people like Gary that have met with him about the key man risk. That's been taken off the table.
The key
And
man
look,
risk
look,
has
There,
been
there's
second of
taken
all,
off
always
we're
the
going
there's
down.
table.
always key man risk, whether
What?
or not it's
That's
significant
like
or not is a
I'm sorry,
different
but like
story.
Guys,
that's an
in
absurd
Darkseid's
statement.
scenario, we're at MNAV of one. So what's the key man risk? If the MNAV is one, what's the key man risk?
There you go. It's
Theft,
just look.
theft of the Bitcoin is a key man risk. There's lots of key man risks.
I
So it
think
goes
the
below
biggest
an
risk,
MNAV of one?
It
the
has in the
Yeah,
biggest
the
past
risk
gone
to
MNAV
below
could
that.
be.
MicroStrategy,
Yeah, the
the
MNAV
biggest
could go
risk
below
to
one.
the biggest risk to MicroStrategy is the government takes their Bitcoin, right? And we don't know what that looks like. That's the biggest risk to MicroStrategy,
I
in my
actually think
opinion.
that's realistic.
I've put that out there. That's been my base case since I joined these spaces. But I just think that being overly bearish in this scenario, like I mean, look, all you got to do is go to the irresponsibly long group and read what they're writing, right? It's so ridiculous. When sentiment is that negative, I just think like there's so much upside. The risk here is not to the downside, it's to the upside. The risk is being short MicroStrategy, and being short MicroStrategy means not owning any. Same thing with
And,
Bitcoin.
and in the context of a global monetary reset, having more Bitcoin for what will be the backstop in the next system potentially, can I tell you what it looks like? No. Would I like to have 1 million Bitcoin? Fuck yeah.
Heard it here first, folks. Would I like to have 1 million Bitcoin? Fuck yeah. Thank you, Punter. Puncher. Sorry. No, I agree.
Obviously not a bond guy.
Well, I think there's good points on both sides of this. I think one of the things we as Bitcoiners don't like to see is centralized powers with too much control. So, that's definitely a drawback. So I get it. Whenever there's a giant old honeypot of Bitcoin sitting anywhere, we get nervous. So I definitely see that
Well,
as,
Lauren,
yeah.
sorry, Lauren. I
No, no,
see
go.
in a lot of spaces the OG Bitcoin guys like are very antithetical to Bitcoin permeating throughout the broader financial system. It's like that's not what it was meant for. Like, well, I don't know. I mean, it's doing what it's going to do. It flows like water through the system. And railing against, you know, MicroStrategy having a man. I'm not saying that's what the guys on this are doing, but I was on a call with Tomer the other day, and it seemed like a lot of guys are like, "This is not what the initial vision of Bitcoin was supposed to be." I'm like, whatever. Bitcoin's going to do. Honey Badger's going to do what it's going to do, and to rail
You
against it and kind of check out is kind of
you
silly.
want to get an opposite opinion? Because I think if we let empty blue circle, give a thumbs up if you have a very different opinion of this, because we could get you up on stage, and I think the conversation may change dramatically.
No, it's not an opinion, Lauren. It's I'm not. What I'm
No,
saying
I'm
is
saying he
we
probably.
can't affect what Bitcoin is going to do as it grows and expands and becomes a financial asset and is adopted more and more and more throughout the world. I mean, you can rail against it,
Yeah,
shake your fist at it,
for sure.
but it is what it is.
Yeah, I definitely hear you. Totally agree, Puncher. Um, Justin, Darkside, you want to roll the dice and let empty blue circle up on the stage? Just have your finger ready for the mute button, because I've been reading his comments and I don't think he agrees with a lot of the views in here, but I'm eager to hear
Yeah,
it.
there's no
Hey,
speaker
we're
spots right now.
yeah, we're full right now. We
Oh,
got to
okay. So
recycle.
just wait a second. We'll get you up here to
Lauren, I'll
yeah.
drop down. I'll drop down.
No, 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 you're fine, man. Stay up here, Puncher. I like when you interject. You use a lot of emotion and you add a lot of value. So please stay up here.
He dropped. Okay,
Hey, Lauren, can I ask a
Yeah,
question?
absolutely.
So, so what's the formula? The value of a network is uh, determined by the square of the nodes. What's that one called? Um, but my concern in that context is that if you have this concentration of Bitcoin, it it devalues the network because there are fewer nodes within the network. There are fewer people using. It's like having one
I think
telephone.
you're confusing Bitcoin the asset and Bitcoin the network here.
Yeah, two different things.
Please explain.
Bitcoin the network is about, partly it's about like actual Bitcoin nodes, but mostly it's about people who will accept Bitcoin as payment, right? And Bitcoin becomes more, just like the telephone becomes more useful the more people have phones, there are more people to call. Bitcoin becomes more useful as a medium of exchange the more people are willing to accept it as money. And that is a completely different question than where is the concentration of the actual Bitcoin tokens, the commodity, the asset, where is that held? This is the same thing. I mean, I've had this debate with people about the SBR. They also, like, a lot of people think the U.S. government owning Bitcoin is like bad for Bitcoin, or precludes Bitcoin as a medium of exchange. I think that's also wrong. I think you can have concentration in asset ownership that does not undermine decentralization of the network itself.
Well,
Constant
I wasn't.
adoption.
I was talking about the ability to spend it in as a medium of exchange. If it's if the God Pharaoh is sitting on the entire stack, and then it has no utility to
Does
anyone
wealth
else
inequality make it
theoretically.
harder to spend
But,
dollars?
No,
yeah, but
it
they're
doesn't.
not. They're not sitting in the whole stack. If they would,
No, what he owns, I don't know, 2-4%, and most Bitcoin, thankfully, isn't like 50+%
it
distributed
actually
amongst individuals.
it actually makes it more valuable because if U.S. government and all these big organizations buy it, it drives up the value and it makes it more likely that people will accept it in other areas
Yes,
of the
agreed.
world.
Yeah, centralization of ownership doesn't affect hash rate either.
Yeah.
So,
Good
um,
points.
I
Great
won't worry
points.
about that as far as NGU goes up. There's nothing that your answer is that concentration doesn't undermine the network. Now, I'm not talking about hash rate or nodes. I'm talking about distribution of coins.
I mean, look at what happened in the block size wars, right? The people who were on the big block side were
What
very influential, owned a lot of the Bitcoin, and they were beat by user activated software.
Hey guys, I just have a question.
yeah,
Shoot.
what does it undermine?
Okay.
Hey,
Sorry,
Um,
hang on,
uh,
Asteroid. Let
sorry,
this
it's
let
it's just
MC
two
ask a
two
question.
quick questions for anybody that wants to answer. So I own some MSTR and I believe in Bitcoin. The
Somebody
oh
muted you. Sorry. Go ahead. Keep
yeah,
going.
no,
I think you muted yourself now.
no, somebody keeps Plan C keeps muting me, but I just have two questions.
Shame on you, Clancy. You're not even on the stage. No, go ahead. Hit us with your questions.
Yeah, so my two questions are so I believe in Bitcoin, I believe in MSTR. The only two questions I have when it comes to MSTR is one, is Michael Saylor acquiring too much Bitcoin? Is there a negative side to that going forward? Because sometimes I see that as a detraction. And the second question is, in the event that Bitcoin, say we had a washout down to like 45,000 or something like that, what would the negative effect for us who do believe in MSTR be? Or what would the consequence of a big washout be if he's now doing the preferred debt and acquiring even more capital, but now he has all that debt on the balance sheets, but we have more Bitcoin.
MSTR is going to go down more. It's more volatile. It's going to go. It's been going up more and going down more. So
In
it's
terms of
riskier and it's more volatile.
in terms of downsides to Bitcoin, there are two, neither of which I think are like very serious or existential threats to Bitcoin. One is just a like perception risk, right? Like one of the things about Bitcoin is it's sort of fair, neutral money. And even though like anyone can acquire it on whatever terms, there will be people maybe who see concentration of Bitcoin ownership among MicroStrategy shareholders as like bad for the Gini coefficient of Bitcoin, and maybe that's bad marketing to some extent. I don't think that's like very powerful, but the other potential downside is if something happens to MicroStrategy and the Bitcoin does need to get sold, having a very large overhang of MicroStrategy coins that could potentially hit the market all at once is I think, big risk to the short-term price action of Bitcoin and USD.
But yeah,
Short term.
if also keep in mind that if you're making a bet on MSTR, you're kind of under the assumption that Bitcoin's going to do well. If Bitcoin is terrible, then your MSTR is going to do bad. So like you're bullish on Bitcoin if you're buying MSTR. So yeah, but obviously it could go south, and
But by the way,
MSTR is going to get hammered.
also if something does happen to MicroStrategy, right? If this does end in tears, like I'm preparing myself. The narrative of the next bear market might be all of this run up was opium about Trump, about stuff he didn't do, and all of the buying was just Michael Saylor. Now, I don't think that's true. I think they're like Bitcoin is becoming a more legitimate asset and is being bought by different parts of capital, and that's long term very bullish for Bitcoin. But like part of this MicroStrategy narrative could be weaponized in the reverse in a bear market.
Yeah, I think that was true last cycle. That was essential. Everyone thought the institutions were here, but it was basically just Michael Saylor.
Or like look at the role that Grayscale played, right? People were arbitraging the premium, they were buying lots of Bitcoin for that trade, and then when it reversed, that was pretty bearish.
Yeah, I think that the short term price negativity is a key concept because in the long term, I don't think it does anything to Bitcoin. I believe the same about Satoshi's coins. Like Satoshi were to come back and sell his coins, they're just becoming more decentralized in reality. So, but it would probably spook the market in the short term.
Hey, just a little housekeeping. New speakers, throw your hand up if you're wanting to say something. We're assuming you're coming up here because you want to speak. Because I know it's hard to get a word in edgewise sometimes. Sometimes you want to say something you think is off topic, which is completely fine. We're willing to take a 90-degree turn. So there's other people waiting. So throw your hand up if you want to say something, and we'll try to work you into the conversation here. I know that we just got Texas Toast. We were trying to get. Oh, Prometheus is up here. How you doing? Good to see you again, sir. I know you've been here in the past. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I was. Thanks for giving me the stage. Looking for a moment to interject and say something intelligent.
Now's your chance. I know you're Canadian too, so there's a lot of great Canadian Bitcoiners out there.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
No. For some reason, I don't know. I guess those that feel oppressed by the state feel it more so in Canada, so we're more likely to
I wonder why.
become Bitcoiners. No kidding. Anyway, hopefully, we're all hopeful this year, whether it's with the new administration in the U.S. or even what's going to be the new administration in Canada. I think things will get better, hopefully, but never trust a politician.
Yeah, we're gonna have a
Um,
drink the day that Trudeau resigns or is out of there. So you're in on that. I know pink shirt guy down below, bunch of us down here. I'm a Canadian. I'm gonna be on. We're all gonna either get on Zoom or on Spaces or something, and we're gonna have a toast. So yeah,
I would love that.
yeah,
Please
you're
invite.
in. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but we're excited about that day.
No, it's good. I mean, I think the whole debate on MicroStrategy is very complex. I think what I would say is it's not really binary. Like it's not either investing in Bitcoin or MicroStrategy. They're both, I think, viable investments. Well, obviously, Bitcoin's it's a generational. Anyway, it's totally different from anything else. I can't find the right words to describe it, but I think each and every one of us can employ the MicroStrategy on our own. We don't need to buy this securitized vehicle to get exposure to leverage Bitcoin. If you're an institution and you've got sort of investment policy statement you have to respect, you might have trap funds. You might need a conduit like MicroStrategy to get into the space. And I think as a stock investor, you can definitely benefit from that portal that is justifying a premium right now. But each and every one of us can lever up ourselves with the debt load that we think is reasonable for our own lives, and get a levered position into Bitcoin. And if you can, if you have enough conviction and you can weather the storm and volatility, and you have stable enough income to weather that debt load, like that's the best play in my mind. You have your Bitcoin in self custody, cold storage somewhere, and you pay a mortgage on Bitcoin, and you take a long term bet, and you live through a few cycles, and you change your life. Like, it's not that complicated. And like MicroStrategy having access to debt at 0%, okay, fine, but like all that convertible debt can convert to a certain amount of Bitcoin, and water down the amount of equity holders in shareholders in MicroStrategy owning that Bitcoin. You can take a home equity line of credit on your house, pay whatever 4, 5, 6, 7%, and not have to share any of that upside. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like it's great to have the debate. I have it in my portfolio, but it's not the only way you can get exposure to levered Bitcoin. So anyway, that's my thoughts on
That's
MicroStrategy. I wanted
Prometheus?
to. Can
that's
I
way
just?
more.
Before, like, we can revisit that, I would just like to throw a curveball into the discussion, because I listened to an interesting podcast a couple months back, and bought a book as a result, and I'm reading it now. But it's the thought that Satoshi may be John Nash, the guy from the movie A Beautiful Mind. And if you, I don't know if this is like widespread knowledge among our community, but if you look at sort of the profile of John Nash as a mathematician, as an economist, as a cryptographer, as a programmer, um, if you look at all the work he's done and the papers he's published at Princeton and the people he was surrounded by, like, and the
Is he
dates in his
Canadian?
life,
Is he Canadian?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Because that's one of the, for me, if he's not Canadian, he's not Satoshi. So sorry, ruling him out
I
just
mean,
on that basis.
I don't even know if it's appropriate to speculate on who Satoshi is, but I
Yeah,
think
me
the
too.
John Nash hypothesis is compelling. And what I find super interesting about it is when you read all of his papers about asymptotically ideal money, or the eternal equilibrium, or something like that. Like, it's very, very simple. He just wanted a way that humankind could cooperate together with
Was he a
with
programmer at all?
yeah, he was a programmer, and he programmed C++. And he spent
You
Oh
don't like
yeah.
the
Wow.
Peter
yeah.
Todd theory? What's wrong with the HBO version? The Peter Todd. Come on now.
Do we
I
have
don't want to know who
snippets?
Satoshi is. I don't want to
Do we have
know.
snippets of his code, Prometheus?
Pardon
John
me?
Nash code. Do we have snippets of his C++?
No, honestly, like, I bought the book from the podcast. There's a Breedlove podcast with a guest called Brian Solson, I believe, and
Robert
he published a book
Robert
called
Breedlove.
yeah. He published a book called Bitcoin and Nash Equilibrium. Honestly, it's I apologize if he's listening, but it's poorly written. But the information is all there, and when you kind of cross-reference the information with the publicly accessible papers published at Princeton, it's very simple what his vision was. Like, he spent a long time trying to push for, like, basically a worldwide currency where different countries could cooperate together more easily, just as sort of a student of economies, and how to make economies efficient.
You think it
And
was poorly written?
I don't mean that as an insult.
I'm actually the author of that book. Thanks a lot.
Pardon me.
I'm actually the author of that book. Thanks a
Asteroid is
lot.
trying to be funny, but I think he's
He's
failing.
kidding.
Yeah,
No,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm kidding. I'm joking.
I'm always
Yeah.
afraid, as a Canadian. I'm always afraid I'm going to offend somebody.
Yeah.
Prometheus.
Yeah.
Prometheus, there's one point I want to make to your argument that the traditional finance world can't buy Bitcoin and hold it in self custody.
I hear you.
Right.
I'm part of a major pension fund. I'm not ready to divulge my identity, but in Canada, there's basically 6 major pension funds. I'm part of one. I understand,
Hey, when
like,
you
and
say part of one, I'm assuming that you mean you're one of the decision makers, or up higher than that,
I'm
or
one
not
of
just
the
a
in
member.
yeah, sort of. I'm one of the front office employees. We're, I don't know, I guess about 500 front office investment employees. I specifically work in project finance and infrastructure, but I'm very in tune with the DNA of the institution and how we're limited in what we can invest through a variety of different.
Let's play a game. It's called 20 Questions.
No, I'm not
Are
going to
you
play
in
that.
Toronto? No, I'm just kidding. Sorry. No, I don't want to, divulge your
No,
So,
but I hear you,
All right.
dark side. Like I get it, and I've ran I built a very sort of primitive, rough model of like projecting out Bitcoin's price. Sorry, MicroStrategy's price based on a couple assumptions. Like the big two assumptions that you have to work into your model is, okay, what do you think Bitcoin price is going to be in the next few years? And two is like how much institutional demand is there for equity and fixed income products that can have exposure to Bitcoin.
But
So
I would add
like
to that. No, I would add to that the waning confidence in fiat currencies. Right? Like to me, the beautiful the one of the beautiful things that MicroStrategy brings to the table is that it is going to be the main lever in exposing the fiat currency weakness, right? Like as more capital and more dollars are created to buy MicroStrategy's products through the traditional finance world, right? That exposes the fiat currency. And as the whole complex lifts, that benefits everybody. So to
dark side, I hear you. Can I just as a quick rebuttal? Like I work in project finance. I work in infrastructure projects, in structuring the financing of infrastructure projects worth between $1 and $10 billion Canadian. Um, I have really long term financial models
That's
that and all the revenues.
$3,500 US, by the way. Sorry, I just had
Yeah.
to do the conversion for us, for the US folk listening. Sorry, go
Okay.
ahead.
And so all the basically different cash flow streams in the businesses we're involved in the infrastructure projects we build are extremely contractualized, and I spend a tremendous amount of time looking at inflation clauses and trying to find ways that I can negotiate basically um, uh, inflation indices that are structured like specifically to the cost inputs that we have, because I myself have seen the impact of inflation on our returns. And while our returns look good from a nominal basis, when you adjust for like real returns, returns are terrible. But the problem is I work in an institution and in an entire industry that is convinced that the CPI numbers we're seeing are and published by governments around the world are truthful. And I think there's more and more openness to people um, seeing the government manipulating numbers.
Prometheus, are you saying that our government lies to us? What?
Yeah,
Unheard
well,
of.
unfortunately, they bend the truth to their benefit, but it's always bent in the same direction, and it becomes really obvious once you become sensitive to it. And we're all sensitive to it as Bitcoiners. What I'm saying is there's still a lot more work to be done. Bitcoin remains sort of magical internet money to the layman, and like it took me 2 years, even though I was really sensitive to all the damage caused by inflation, which already is a step ahead of most people. And I have a finance background. I work at an institutional firm, this and that. But it still took me 2 years of work before I decided I was going to relever my house and invest all the proceeds into Bitcoin. Like it, it took me 2 years of self study, of being totally devoted to it during the pandemic, to emerge a laser-eyed maximalist. Like I was a traditional finance guy before, and even though I talk to a bunch of people who surround me are more exposed now to Bitcoin because I've been orange pilling them. But it's fucking hard work, and it takes a long time to convince people of the merits of Bitcoin. Like it's not an easy pill for people to swallow. So like I hear you, Dark Side. I think we have a bit of an echo chamber as Bitcoiners. Like the majority of people, especially in the traditional finance world, aren't ready to accept that Bitcoin is going to supplant the U.S. dollar as a world reserve currency. Even though they see weakness in the currency, they can't clearly see that Bitcoin's a solution. So there's a lot more education to be done, and it's a hard road to go. Like I think it's going to be the intransigent minority, where 10% of the world or those involved in finance truly believe in Bitcoin because of all the facts of the protocol, that like it's not, the average person is not going to understand it, and there's going to be sort of an inflection point at some point where there's enough of us that understand it that we start to move the needle. And I think that's what we're seeing is like that flow of capital into Bitcoin through MicroStrategy is like a conduit that like accelerates that. But it's not going to happen tomorrow. Like this is going to take several years, like decades, maybe.
Hey,
Well,
Prometheus, curious how you, you know, in my Bitcoin education, one of the rules or principles I said I would never violate is stay humble, stack sats. So no leverage, nothing like that. But now I kind of regret that. Did you have to kind of justify violating that to use debt to buy Bitcoin? Because the other inescapable fact is that in a fiat economy, it pays to be a net debtor. So really, that one to me trumps the stay humble, stack sats. My problem, and you're not alone in what you've done. I think you know that. We had another speaker on Spaces, um, I think about 6 months ago, who talked about doing something similar, and he's got access to cheap credit. And I had an exchange with him via DM, and I was trying to get some information, and he got quiet pretty quick. But I would actually like to do that myself. What you've described instead of.
Justin,
Well, look,
do you regret only being humble?
I'm sorry.
You said you regret not taking on leverage. Did you say that?
Yes.
Okay.
what I would say about leverage is I know it's a sensitive discussion. I know that we live in a world of debt based fiat slavery. Like it's terrible. That being said, like the last thing I would ever do is hold sort of cash in my accounts. Just because that real purchasing power of my dollars are being stolen from me through the act of invisible taxation, which is inflation. That being said, by extension, if I have access to cheap capital, if I see this asset that's growing, call it 50% a year over year, whatever it is, and I have a source of capital that is, basically less than the rate of inflation, let's call it 5% debt, 5% interest on my debt. I'm like the second worst thing I can do aside from holding cash in my bank account is, you know, not benefit from all that debt. And I'm in a specific situation where I live below my means and I can service that debt stress free. It's in my mind, I've basically decided to take my salary in Bitcoin for the next 5 years as I pay off my loan. But that's the way I relativize, if that's the word in English, my investment strategy. So like anyway, that's my thoughts on it. That's how I made peace with it.
Yeah, Prometheus. I actually think that you being in traditional finance is kind of maybe more of a handicap than most people have. I have a degree in finance from Brigham Young University's Marriott School of Business, and so I've been in Bitcoin since early 2013. But that's because I was always kind of the black sheep in the finance program. I was like the Ron Paul libertarian, and I'd get in a lot of arguments in my classes and stuff. And man, I've, I'm like I'm a relatively successful alumni, like because of Bitcoin, and I've been back there like I don't know 5 or 6 times the last few years, and my my favorite finance professor, he would always call me the VP of Common Sense in his finance class. He's now the head of the finance program there at BYU. And man, I've been in there to see him like 3 or 4 times, and I just can't get them to move at all. Like he's man, he was a Goldman guy for 12 years. I think his office was literally next door to the CEO of Goldman. And man, I've been in there trying to like explain Bitcoin to those guys, and they have they want to be like progressive as a university, like they have a DeFi course. And man, I was in there, I was like, dude, this is just so stupid. Get rid of this DeFi course. I can write you an entire Bitcoin miner, 5 classes. Let's put it together. Like I can come on teach adjunct if you want, or I can like just help your professors. But man, it's just it's hard coming out of traditional finance because you're just so privileged with the world reserve currency, essentially. I mean, in the Western world, I know Canada is not quite the U.S., but it's still, similarly benefits. So
I agree with you completely. My theory is that I actually have an undergrad in engineering and then an MBA in finance. My what I've realized is that whereas in engineering, in order to do sort of your call design work, I was a civil engineer. So in order to do that work, you need to have a very clear understanding of physics and mathematics to be able to then apply that to structural steel or reinforced concrete and be able to do your craft. When you study finance, what I was struck by when I first encountered it was that there's like a tremendous amount of of things you need to accept, of mechanisms you just need to accept as being the only way that it can work, like the myth of 2% inflation needed in order to incite people to spend their money to make the economy work is just a fallacy. And the problem is finance bros don't understand that they've sort of they haven't learned the first principles of finance, that they have all these assumptions that they start their lessons with, that when they build on top of it, they have all this sophisticated knowledge about how the financial markets work, but they don't have a clear understanding how money works. And so I think it's really tough to deal with these people and to teach traditional finance guys and girls how Bitcoin works, because so much it has to do with their ego. Like people that work in finance, they tend to identify with their profession a lot as individuals, and Bitcoin makes you question your ego. It's really tough to get through to these folks because they don't realize that they have all these flawed assumptions
Hey,
in their
hey,
education.
Prometheus, have you ever read Malcolm Gladwell's Tipping Point?
I haven't, no.
Yeah, I'd recommend you grab that understanding of how this is going to happen. But ultimately, only about maybe 3 or 4% of us are going to get Bitcoin out of desire. The rest of us are going to get Bitcoin out of necessity. And Saylor did an incredible job of pointing out in an interview, I think it was with PPD. He talked about economics as being just voodoo science. And I think that's 100% correct. So what you have is you have all these academics and TradFi guys that are practicing a voodoo science. Sort of let's just go back to the world is flat, right? And remember what happened when the suggestion that the world is round came about, right? Like it was let's jail the scientists, right? Like that's the automatic reaction to being told that what you believe is wrong is to go after the people that tell you that what you believe is wrong. But ultimately it doesn't matter, because in the end, real when economics becomes true science, right? The science of hard money, then all of these kind of 2% inflation, all the bullshit that's been thrown into the mix up until now, which is just made up, it's voodoo, right? All that's going to go by the window, and we're going to get to a real science of economics based around hard money. So I think that's the answer to your question is to go out, read the tipping point, understand that we're going to hit a point at which the system tips over. And I do believe, just to kind of throw it to MicroStrategy for a second, he's playing a very valuable role in speeding up the conversion, because his ability to borrow money at 0% non-recourse, his ability to create these financial products that suck fiat into Bitcoin will eventually expose the fiat world as being nothing more than just pseudoscience.
yeah, I mean, economics taught in university anywhere in the world is just
it's just Marxist gobbledygook. I mean, it's just garbage. It's all Keynesian Marxism. There's nothing scientific about it.
Chris, is it raining over across the pond today? How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. No, not really. Maybe a drizzle. Very cold though, kind of like -1 degrees centigrade. So not very cold, but chilly. So yeah, wrap up warm if you're planning on visiting anytime soon. Um, but the whole MicroStrategy thing, like saying Dark Side that Sailor is doing a great job of speeding this up. Like I kind of understand where you're coming from with it, but uh, if it does start to implode, if the dollar starts to implode, which I think is what you're insinuating, then these guys are borrowing from the future in order to buy Bitcoin. They're going to liquidate assets, which means they're going to pull their money out of MSTR, for example. And this won't be their only asset, right? So they're just going to look at what's liquid, where can I suck money from in order to try and protect myself. And so I'm just trying to understand. Like, I'm not sure I see how MSTR actually does what you're saying it does. I
Yeah.
might be
So
wrong. I might be
so
wrong.
let me
I'm genuinely
yeah
asking. I'm not making a
let,
statement here.
let me explain it to you this way.
Yeah.
When he creates a financial product, let's just call it a bond, and he sells $10 billion worth of bonds. Okay, what really happens is the people buying those bonds create dollars. They take a loan from Citigroup, right, at SOFR plus a half, and then they invest it in MicroStrategy bonds. So you have money creation for the sole purpose of buying Bitcoin or getting Bitcoin exposure, I think is a better term. Right. So whenever you
Right,
have
but
money,
then can they keep it though? They have exposure, but they like for me, right? I convert my pounds into bitcoins and then I hold it on the basis that if the pound implodes, then I have an asset that is going to maintain its value as a global asset against the pound. But if I've had to borrow the pounds and the bound, I mean, I suppose I wait until the future and then sell the asset in order to then pay back the loan. Is that in effect what you're saying and what's happening here?
yeah, essentially. But remember, when a bond, the way bond funds work is they tend to be levered, let's call it 5 times, 10 times, right? So they're looking to capture the spread between the MicroStrategy performance and the Treasury bond, right? And then multiply that by 5. But when they create that leverage, that's printing more and more fiat currency to do it. So as this thing just continues to grow and spiral, right, you're just printing more and more dollars. And in the end, we know that that's in the end killing the system. So in that respect, the entire process that MicroStrategy is doing of giving institutions access to Bitcoin exposure through banks printing more money is accelerating the entire process.
Cool. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. I'm on a journey with macro. I think I've got my mental modeling of Bitcoin pretty well founded. I'm
Well,
sure there's
well,
still lots
look,
to learn, but
look at it this way. If Bitcoin is trading $1 million, okay, and there's 20 million of them, then you've printed $20 trillion, right? What is that going to do to inflation?
right, it's going to go up. Yeah.
Right, but at what point does it just hyperinflate? Is it 20 trillion? Is it 30 trillion, 40 trillion? Right,
Well,
you,
my
you, see,
my my
you see
view
my
is at the
point.
moment the dollar's got a huge opportunity at the moment to expand into the rest of the world, and I think that's why Tether, as one example, is being allowed to propagate, right? Because and we're seeing hyperinflation of other currencies, and so I think the crazy thing is the dollar has still got a massive sponge that can absorb it before we have this apocalyptic event that you speak of, where the dollar itself hyperinflates. I think we're a long way off that still. As
Yeah,
much as it baffles me, and
potentially.
yeah,
Potentially, but we're going to hit a tipping. We're going to hit a tipping point where people around the world in every nook and cranny of the globe decide that it's just easier to have Bitcoin on their phone than try to get dollars.
Yeah,
And
We're
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
hit.
guys, I'm gonna
We
just
will hit that.
jump into
Uh,
housekeep again. Throw your hand up if you want to say something. There's a bunch of speakers that are on deck trying to get up here. So I know we got another Canadian treasure, Kenny G. Oh wait, that's a different Kenny G, but definitely Canadian. So throw your hand up if you want to say something. If not, we'll probably try
Yes.
to work some people in and out of the stage so that we can get as many new faces up here as possible. How are you, Kenny?
Good. How are you, man? Thank you for having me. Real quick, my question is not really about Bitcoin per se, but it's Bitcoin related. It's about Bitcoin miners, stocks like Marathon and Riot and Hood 8, the Canadian one. I don't know if you heard of Hood, HUT. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correct.
Yeah, it's fine.
Hut.
We all know. Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick. Do you follow them closely? I really like Hut 8 because they have low outstanding shares, unlike Marathon and Riot. Um, I don't know if you follow them closely, and if you do, where do you see the price going? Right now, it's trading at like thirty
Um,
five
Can I
bucks or
can I
something.
feedback one little point on this? Does anyone
yeah,
mind?
yeah. Let's not spend a lot of time on the miners. Maybe we'll
Okay.
send him over to
Okay,
Mike Alfred.
I'm sorry.
No, no, no.
No
You're
problem.
fine.
Well, my
I was a big mining guy back in the day, but I have since just in, and this is stuff only I mess around with in my 401k plan. But I've since rolled it over to MicroStrategy and the Bitcoin ETFs. But go ahead, Chris, and then we'll refer him to Mike Alfred, who still seems to be a giant fan of the Bitcoin miners. Go ahead, Chris. Chris, did we lose you?
Sorry,
There you are.
very
Yeah,
quick,
yeah.
very quick story,
You.
very
Uh-huh.
quick story. So I know someone who has a farm and they have a digester and they pour huge volumes of waste material into this digester and it generates electricity. They convert the methane through a generate and then they feed into the grid and they make about. This is kind of back of cigarette packet numbers, but £250,000 a month in electricity by feeding the grid. And so I know someone who knows them really well. And I said, look, can we just do a bit of an explore on mining? And I spoke to some very prominent people who I'm fortunate enough to have some connections with, and started to look at, okay, how much does this cost to set up? How much can I generate? And is this a viable alternative? And the answer was a very large, resounding no. And the more I ran the maths, the more I realized how unviable mining is, even when you have an energy source that is in effect free, because if you can feed the grid, the return is actually pretty good, right? And so the point I'm making here is that a lot of the miners they're so competitive that the edge they have over it, that the edge that they're creating in the marketplace is based on the credit they can generate from the shares that they're in effect selling, and so the executives and the people within the mining companies may be making very good money, but I don't. And this is not financial advice. This is just the back of fag packet stuff that I did. Was that these are not great opportunities. They're hyped up. They're marketed like everything else in fiat. And actually, if you have access to be able to buy Bitcoin and spot Bitcoin and just hold it, it's a far better proposition than holding very risky mining stocks. So
My
that was the conclusion I went through when I
yeah.
went on this journey, and I just thought I'd share it with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. If that was your short version, I would hate to listen to the long version.
I
Oh,
could speak for a lot longer. Yeah, join.
yeah. No, I'm kind of in the same camp. It seems like the mining companies are kind of flashing that they realize that long term they may face some struggles when they're starting to accumulate Bitcoin. I mean, to me, it's all about accumulating Bitcoin. But when you see Mara and other companies starting to go, oh shit, we're gonna pull out the MSTR playbook, it may be an indication that they realize long term they're going to face some struggles. So personally, I don't think I have any minor exposure right now. But go visit Mike Alfred's page because he's a giant uh, mining fan and he has a silver tongue and can talk like Obama and he's probably a guy if you're interested in the miners to listen to. I don't see eye to eye with Mike on a lot of things, but then again, if you're comparing our wealth, he's got me covered. So don't listen to me on miners. Go listen to Mike. Personally, it's a no bueno for me. Prometheus wants to weigh in on that. Remember, any new speakers, raise your hands, and we'll try to work you into the convo. I know we've kind of taken a right turn here, but go ahead, Prometheus.
Thanks. Just reverting back to Chris's original question about MicroStrategy and the obligation to eventually repay its debt when fiat currencies eventually unwind. I think that's maybe a misconception. A lot of people that are close to me have the same misconception about MicroStrategy. That debt will never be repaid. Like, it'll be refinanced, just like investors do on real estate assets. No one will sell their investment property to pay down their debt. They're going to, as the nominal value of the asset they hold increases, they're going to continuously roll over that and optimize their capital structure as that asset gains value in nominal fiat terms. And so the debt that's currently on MicroStrategy will just it'll never be repaid. Let's be clear about that. It'll just be rolled over, rolled over, rolled over, and you will benefit from the accretion of the underlying asset price, just like you would in real estate investing. So maybe I just wanted to clear that up.
Yeah, I was actually talking more about the investors, but I think for me, all of these shenanigans are the very reason that I'm buying Bitcoin spot and holding it in self custody. And I can't put my finger on it or say it's great or not, and kind of speak to the technicalities behind them and the mechanisms behind how these things are all working to the level that you guys can. But what I do know is that I like to sleep soundly at night, and I feel like that I can do that when I minimize
Chris, you're gonna
counterparty
miss
risk.
some gains, brother. You're gonna
I'm fine
miss
with
some
that. I'm
gains.
happy to. I'm
No,
happy to
I'm
miss some
I'm totally
gains.
joking. I'm actually in your camp, but I
Yeah,
totally support people. I have buddies on this call that are just loaded up on MicroStrategy, and I compliment them. I pat them on the back, but I'm not there personally. I'm more on your camp. I do own, a small amount of MicroStrategy, like I mentioned earlier, and a 401k plan, but hey, man, I am all about freedom. Freedom first. And yeah, if you can,
I agree.
I
I
really think
agree.
people are going to do well in the short term of MicroStrategy and beat Bitcoin. So I mean, awesome. That's amazing. But like I stated before, I'm here for a different reason. And so even if I miss some of those gains, it doesn't matter to me because I'm here for a different reason. So I'm definitely with you. I didn't mean to. I was being completely sarcastic when I was throwing out the gains statement on you, Chris.
No, no, all good. And I agree. Like, I think people, if they want to, I've actually bought a little bit of MSTR, just like a very small amount, just to have some skin in the game and to pique my interest and follow it along. And I think it's interesting to see what's going on. So I'm fascinated by it all, but I'm certainly not going to put anything in it that I'm not prepared to lose because I think. Yeah, it's counterparty risk, which is the antithesis of what Bitcoin offers, the mass reduction of counterparty risk.
Chris, Lauren, I agree with you completely. I'm in the same camp as you. I believe in Bitcoin and cold storage. I think the original point I made when I first logged on was you can you can limit counterparty risk and employ the MicroStrategy play by building your own capital structure, like homemade leverage to execute it. You don't need to go through the investment vehicle, which is MicroStrategy, which is great, which I hold some of, but you can be truly sovereign.
Well,
I think if you've got the majority in BTC and then you want to do, and I spoke to our Sea British shoulder down there, and I said to him, what percentage would you suggest? And he said 75% BTC, 25% MSTR, and I'm like, cool, that makes a lot of sense. If people want to do that, that's great. So yeah, everyone's just got to make their own decisions based on how much risk
yeah,
and
Chris,
counterparty
Chris,
risk they're
you
comfortable
mentioned
to take.
British. I don't know how much you've been listening British, but I did want to ask you your thoughts on the 100K party, and then maybe transition into answering that question if you heard it. If not, we can have Chris restate it. How are you?
Afternoon, guys.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Apologies, I didn't hear it because I was having audio issues. That's why I had to reconnect. What was the topic?
Well, first let's talk about the party. How was it?
It was fantastic. It was the party to be at. It was a sign of the times to come. One of the things that I picked up at the party was how early we actually are to this whole MSTR thing. There was no representation from BlackRock, no representation from Fidelity, and that was just quite insulting to me. I think they should have sent some representation there. But that also tells me that we are very, very early. And you could tell it was a good party because you got people like Justin throwing salt at it that are sitting here that are like, upset that they didn't get invited. And there was a bunch of people there that were
Hey,
having a
British,
really great time.
can I? I'm just gonna cut you off because somebody else that was at the party is on the stage, so we can have another viewpoint. I saw some of his photos, and I have. I'm jealous. FOMO like crazy. Ben, another famous Canadian. How are you, sir? How was that party?
It was a hell of a time.
Oh man.
I did not expect to get the invite. I was sitting here with my wife like 2 weeks before New Year's and got an email, and it was a frantic time trying to figure out, getting the kids taken care of while getting last minute flights down there. But yeah, it
Oh, that
was.
looks so
I,
awesome, man.
I can only imagine the price tag of it.
Yeah, last minute flights aren't cheap. So I know.
Listen, Ben is the most humble guy on the face of the planet because if there was anyone that should have been invited, it was Ben. And I'm glad he was there. It was a pleasure to meet you and Mr. Sessions too.
Oh man,
Yeah, man, it was good
another
chatting.
famous Canadian that went to the party. Tomer. Man, I'm jealous, you guys.
Yeah. Is there a question or just yeah? It was a great part.
No,
It
we're
was a
just
great party. It was
commiserating with those of us that weren't able to attend.
it was an
But
awful party. You missed
yeah,
nothing. Don't
thanks.
worry
I
about
feel
it.
much
It was
better now.
terrible. The
No,
food
I've
was
It
thrown.
awful.
was it
The
was the
yacht were
Great
like I mean, who
Gatsby.
doesn't have a yacht like that?
It was the Great Gatsby party of Bitcoin, and it was the place to be. There
Yeah.
was he had turned his house into a parts of it was like a museum for Bitcoin's history. They had they built a rave station in his back lawn. They had the pool going. They had 8 different stations for food. All the food was amazing and excellent. The best food in Miami that night. Alcohol everywhere. The yacht was open. It was the place to be, right?
See,
And you know
that
that
sounds
because
amazing. Yeah, these are things I
yeah,
haven't heard yet, but I love it. I've seen some pictures, and I was like, I wanna be there. I threw a little shade that way, but it was all just for comedic value. Because in actuality, I was just sitting on the sidelines, just kind of crying to myself, wishing I was there. So I love hearing
I'd
these.
say for me
Yeah,
the most
go.
interest there were a lot of interesting experience, but if we're gonna share personal stories, um, I went on like you could go on and off the yacht, which was a really nice yacht, and the second time I went on, I was with Cedric Youngelman. I met him there. He's a podcaster of the
Oh,
Bitcoin
Cedric
Matrix.
was there too.
Cedric was there.
Oh
But
man.
the story gets a little bit better. I was like, let's go to the sit down part of the yacht. Like the yacht was like 3 stories, and the sit down part had a really comfortable couch. And lo and behold, Michael Saylor was there, and so I said, hey, let's sit down across from Michael Saylor. And it turned out I was sitting next to some guy from Rumble. I don't know exactly what his role there was, but Michael began the conversation directly at him, and he said, "You better buy Bitcoin with all of your treasury because the only reason your stock price is pumping is because everyone expects you to buy Bitcoin with all your treasury." And then I was kind of in the middle. There was the Rumble guy on the right, I was in the middle, and Cedric was on the left. And so Michael focused his attention like directly at me, and he was like laser eyes right on me. And he went on for at least 25 minutes about all of this financial engineering stuff. He mentioned pref shares. He mentioned all the different pricing of these different instruments, whether they were capped or not. I was really struggling my best to keep up and follow everything, but I'm not an options trader. I'm not a trader in these derivative instruments. So I was having a bit of a hard time following, but it sure sounded like there's a lot of demand for all sorts of volatility adjusted derivative instruments surrounding Bitcoin. And Michael was as committed as ever to buying Bitcoin with every dollar he could get his hands on through whatever means he could get his hands on. And when that
What's
whole
the
thing was over, Michael got up and went to another crowd of people who were standing in that part and began something very, very similar with them. They were much more famous than us. So it was like a really intense experience when you were around with Michael, and then when you were around with everybody else, it was just like, hey, you, nice to meet you, nice to see you again. And as British was saying, lots of really interesting parts. Like the party was spread out in so many different places. The library had Fractal and Crypt's artwork on display, and there were just all sorts of other areas where people were congregating for doing different things. But if you wanted a noisy area for dance, there was this giant tent set up. I guess that's what the rave floor that British was referring to. And then there was the area where they were filming, and then there were tons of food stations and tons of bars and like
Oh man.
dancers, like acrobatic
Oh,
dancers.
I see another party goer up here on the stage. We'll maybe go to him after Ben. Neil was there. I saw him in some pictures. So Ben, to
Yeah.
you.
Oh, is Neil up on stage? Neil and I kept bumping into each other, wanting to say hi, but like I was off to somewhere and he was off to somewhere, so we didn't get a chance.
Floor is yours, Ben.
Oh yeah, sorry, I was just listening to the convo.
Oh, you
But
had your
yeah,
hand up. I didn't know if you had your hand up.
yeah,
Okay, sorry, go.
yeah. There's just one party goer that was there. I was pleasantly surprised with his level of knowledge, which I wasn't expecting. Was T.J. Miller, the guy from Deadpool and Silicon
Oh yeah,
Valley?
the comedian. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, so he was there, and it was like the end of the night. I was chatting to him for like a good half hour, and he knows his shit. Like he's talking, he understands like Bitcoin only. He's talking about like different ways to secure and everything. He's definitely done the work, and he's talking about like, oh, like you need at least this many hours to start like actually understanding things and appreciating what Bitcoin is. And he was I don't know, again, just overall, just an observation, pleasantly surprised
One of
with
us.
TJ
Ben,
Miller's
One
knowledge.
maybe
of us.
So a tangential story to that, because this is going to be funny. I wouldn't bring it up otherwise. The last half hour of the party, I was chatting with the woman who was waiting for her husband, and I was handing out copies of my kid's book, and I asked, "Do you have kids?" And I won't. She said no. She said maybe
Gomer
they
said,
will
"Do you want
someday,
them?"
but she asked for a copy of the book anyway, so I gave her a copy of the book, and then lo and behold, she turned out to be TJ's wife. He came over afterwards. So while you were chatting with TJ BTC sessions, I was chatting up his wife.
That's hilarious.
Nice. And
British.
you're orange pilling kids that aren't born yet.
Yes.
Ben, maybe you don't remember, but TJ used to come into Bullish as Fuck rooms in 2021, and the first time he came in to start asking about cold storage and all this other stuff, I was the one to tell him to go watch your YouTube channel. So
That's funny.
he's
Maybe
been
that's why he was so friendly.
he's been in the game for a very, very long time.
That's awesome. Hey, Neil.
His wife did say that her trouble was she was a maximalist and he was a shitcoiner, though. So I don't.
I love it. Neil, do you have any stories from that amazing party that most of us missed?
Yeah, no, it was great at seeing everybody on stage. It felt like kind of like the Bitcoin conferences, but with a lot more like pomp and circumstance. Like when you're in like the VIP areas, maybe like Bitcoin Nashville or when it's going to be in Vegas, it had a lot of those vibes, but like to like at an exponential when it comes to like parties and festivities. And I know online, like I saw some people giving it a little, some jabs in terms of,
That's
Justin
me.
right here.
That
Justin
was me.
needed some extra salt. I had to send him some molten salt for his
well, not,
steak.
the
But British, it wasn't based on me thinking I should be there.
no,
Let's be clear about that.
the truth is, there definitely were some people that I'm really not familiar with, but at the same time, it was mostly Bitcoiners, like a super majority of Bitcoiners, and it was great seeing everybody. And I think there
That
were
sounds
actually
awesome.
supposed to be a lot more people initially there, like 3 times the amount, but this
Yeah, my
the city.
invitation showed up 3 days late. So, and
No,
I
but
was one of
it
those
was like
people that was
it was
throwing
like a
shade, but
it was like a city.
sarcasm is my love language, so it was all in love. So
It
sorry,
was
go ahead,
like
Joe.
a.
Hey, the
Can you
fact that
hear me?
Homer and
Can
Ben
you
and
hear me or
Canute
no?
and those
Oh, we're
guys
talking
were
over you,
there.
Neil. Sorry, we just was slaughtering you, jumping all over what you're saying. Go ahead, re-say it because it was me, my fault. Go ahead.
Okay. No, there was like some city ordinance which limited it to only like I think 500 people, but it was gonna be like 3 times the size of that, which is crazy to think about because seemed like so many people anyways. And
Wow.
it was upsetting. I wish I was able to talk to more people, but you get caught in conversations. One of the good things is though, it's great to see like Ben, British, Tomer, but it's also good, meeting new people too. I got to speak with Bill Miller for the first time, him and his dad, and it was a really cool experience because they were actually wearing FOMO 21 merch to Sailor's party, which was awesome. And I told a few people this story already, but on our website we have like a Bitcoin logo that's after the Baltimore Orioles, like it's in that design. And Bill Miller, the older one, Bill Miller the third, said he just bought it, and I said, "Oh, are you an Orioles fan?" And he's like, "I'm a part owner of the team." I'm like, "Please don't sue me." But he like smiled, so it's like that was like a really cool story. Um, I talked to a senator was there that's working on legislation with Cynthia Lummis. Met her whole family. It was great to connect with them. But yeah, just seeing familiar faces is cool. But again, like you're not going to obviously get the level of party at like a Bitcoin conference. But if you want to, meet people, you could definitely see a lot of those people there. Um,
That's
but
awesome, Neil. Hey, I just give you a shout out. I ordered some merch for my stepkids
oh,
for
awesome!
Christmas last minute, and you guys got it to me on time. Good stuff. I love it. I'm
Sweet.
definitely a fan. I've placed multiple orders.
Love to hear it. It was
Yeah,
funny because you have like Bill Miller and Bill Miller the third and fourth. They're wearing FOMO 21 merch, and I'm not even wearing it. They made me look bad at the party, right? Like I came. When I heard it was going to be like chic or like a little bit upscale, I'm like, oh, I can't wear a graphic T-shirt. But if you're a billionaire, you could show up in a graphic T-shirt, and it doesn't really matter.
Or if you're pressing fish.
Or Preston Fish, yeah.
press and
Well,
fish.
he studied billionaires, so that's why he could do it.
Touche.
That's why he's allowed genes.
British.
I'll tell you, one of the best things about, Justin was pointing out that there was a bunch of shitcoiners and et cetera there. Like, walking around these people, they only opened up about their shitcoining when they felt safe. They were like completely and utterly surrounded by Bitcoiners that would have sliced their throats open if they had started. So it was quite cool to see all these shitcoiners get held down like the dirty dogs that they are.
Yeah, not like intentionally, but it almost seems like they just kind of like hang out together, and then all the Bitcoiners are hanging out together. It's just this like natural flow, where we just
It's like they were hostages. That's
it's
what it
like
was like. It was like
you just don't know them. Like I just don't even know these people, so I don't even And then they want to talk about like stuff I'm not interested in. So it's not like even an intentional thing. It just we don't our Venn diagram doesn't really. There's no overlap. There's no intersection.
I think I just wanted to add something too with the juxtaposition of like, yeah, of course, there's some folks there that I was like, I don't know. But when those people who they do indeed have quite a lot of people that listen to what they say, side would say, unfortunately, but those people shoved into like this massive, massive party with all of these other people, and there's an air of stigma in the air about kind of what they're about. And so my hope is, and maybe I'm overly optimistic, but my hope is that that continues to kind of rub off on some of these people. Like, I mean, even when I started my channel, like I earlier my first couple of years, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I was doing like tutorials on shit, and I was using, one of my first Trezor tutorials was using Ethereum to transact with. So like, people learn. I don't know that their learning trajectory is headed that way, but let's hope that being in a room, as British said, with like massively outnumbered by Bitcoiners and starting to understand more of the ethos maybe changes a few minds. We'll see.
Hey guys, one question I have I still don't understand is with Yellow, was that real or was that a big joke that Yellow crashed the party, or Surely he was invited, right? I still don't understand.
I will
It was
neither
all
confirm nor deny.
Okay, that's what I thought. Nobody's going to answer. All right.
There was an NDA in place, Justin, and if you were invited like you wanted to be, you would have signed that NDA too.
Okay.
I specifically saw him on Croesus's lapel, so that for sure was him.
Confirmation. I like how you worded the delicately, I might add, worded the folks that were there that some of us were scowling from the sidelines. But I totally agree with you, Ben. It's part of my journey too, a ton of altcoins. And I think maybe changing the tune from F you have fun staying poor to like, hey, we can be friends, but I don't see eye to eye with you on these things is a much better approach than, the kick in the nuts. So I totally get it.
I have found that.
Yeah, the whole more bees with honey than a stick thing. I know Sailor was on the the blonde guy that brought the bodyguard from wherever. Like he has a giant following and is quite a altcoiner, we'll say. But Sailor was on his show at one point. I remember seeing that. Got the tour of his house and all that jazz. So I think these are great connections because oftentimes when I reply to these people or even give them any credence, I'm actually replying more to their fans as well. Like even Peter Schiff. I'm not trying to convert Peter Schiff. I'm really trying to be proactive in opening the eyes of some of his investors and some of his believers and saying like, hey guys, this message is for you guys, not Peter, because I've written Peter off. But I definitely like the way you put it, Ben, in saying like, hey guys, don't hate so much on some of the people that were here. It might have been a little sketch to some of you, but in reality, I was once there. So hey, let's take them by the hand and lead them on their journey instead of kicking them in the teeth. So I like how you
Yeah. The dynamic here too is that with enough time and exposure to what Bitcoin is, the truth about it versus shitcoins is fully self-evident.
yeah.
And so having that juxtaposition and having people that maybe follow these other people that are, shilling shitcoins, at least if at some point, like you said, that I don't know the guy's name, the blonde guy, but he had Sailor on. So they will have seen a lesson in why Bitcoin only. And then when they get wrecked over the next cycle, they'll be like, oh, I remember that one interview of the guy that told me not to fuck around with all this. And they'll be like, at least then they'll be on a pathway to maybe understanding. So we'll see.
Yeah, for sure. And they'll have, people that are friends and not foes that they can go help them out in their journey too. So I totally agree. And it's not a question of if, it's more a question of when this happens. So totally agree, Ben. I'm still jealous as hell. It does make me feel better that the city ordinance is what kept me out of there because I know I would have been like two or three down on the list of like Lauren will be after.
I saw the list. You were
Yeah,
like within a few. I'm
correct.
nearly positive.
In my
Um,
mind, and that's all that
I
counts.
I will say though, I will say that nobody should feel too bad because honestly, this is any like given sitting through a couple of cycles. These are the types of jams that everybody that is able to just like hodl and sock away money and spend less than you earn. Like your cohorts will begin to be as successful given enough time, right? You're gonna. This is kind of like an eventuality for all early Bitcoiners. Is all of a sudden all of the people that you're around together will continue to get more successful over time, and as a group that will compound. And so, like, I get the initial fiat knee jerk reaction of, oh, there's a bunch of people that have done well at an expensive party. I don't like it because previously the people at those parties would have gotten there by exploiting the fiat system and fucking everybody else by extracting value. But this is kind of the new age of like, hey, people are creating value and benefiting from it and understanding kind of there's a whole new ethos that comes with this. So it's going to be hard to get away from the mentality of, the fiat mentality of eat the rich. I think that needs to be flipped, though. It's like, wow, look how much value so and so provided.
Hey Ben,
Oh,
that was
man of the hour
so
is
well
here.
said. Yeah, I know. Before we go to the man of the hour, before we go to yellow, I just kind of wanted to tie in what Ben said too with what Neil was saying earlier about wanting to meet more people too. And I've found that in, the few Bitcoin conferences that I've gone to, even in meetups, a lot of the time, I don't get a chance to meet everybody that I want. And as what Ben is describing is unfolding, we're going to have more events like he's saying, but regionally and smaller, so we can actually have our own Sailor type parties at 200K or 250 or whatever it is, and we'll just do smaller regional ones, and we will be able to meet more people that way too, because it's like we're in some of these events, it just gets crazy. I went to an event that had less than 300 people and didn't get to meet everybody. So I just think it's a matter of time until what Ben is saying it comes about, and we'll all be at the table. So don't just hang in there, guys. We'll all be there. Yellow, we heard you were on a lapel in the form of I forgot whose jacket you were on, but apparently you were at the party as well. Half the stage has been to the 100K party. Tell us all about it. Just kidding. Nobody said you were.
Yeah,
You weren't there.
I somehow invited myself to the party. I got in,
Congratulations.
but then yeah, Sailor kicked me out. I made a series of tweets about it,
Did you make it
uh,
onto the yacht at least?
and now because I was bored to take off my shoes and all that, and put the thing inside the shoes and all, and take the shoes out and like where are my shoes then? So I have a thing about shoes. I like my shoes. So I didn't go to the boat. Uh, it was just a boat. Yeah.
So it was the shoes thing. You should have worn your boat shoes.
Yeah. I did wear the occult wearings though, and we went to the barracks. Remember that? And we exchanged blood oaths. I did that,
Who did you exchange
but
a who did you exchange a blood oath with?
in the barracks when we went to the barracks for the occult part of the ceremony, and then it didn't work for me because I'm polyester. So that's when Sailor got me and he kicked me out. And yeah, was fun, I guess.
Hey, Ben, I was just thinking about another thing. Don't feel bad. There's a long list of Bitcoin folk that definitely would be more deserving than I that probably could have made the list. So don't feel bad for, any of us schmucks and just hodlers to not go. I'm totally joking about any shade I cast at the party or anything else. All in good fun. I'm more jealous than anything.
I'm just glad Yellow was there. I'm just glad Yellow was
Yeah.
there.
You didn't
Well
get in on
deserved.
the blood oath though, huh?
Unfortunately,
Simon,
unfortunately.
Simon, did you get your invite to the sailor party? I didn't see pictures of you there.
Hey everybody, happy New Year.
Like,
No, just listening in. I don't know. I've become kind of strange since COVID. I think the psyop really affected me. I only did like a couple of trips to El Salvador since COVID, and like I used to go to all. Like I used to go. I did the annual Bitcoin conference every year since 2011. And I had a couple of years where I think I did 50 different countries. But since probably last 4 years, COVID time, yeah, I just kind of don't do the conferences anymore or the parties and stuff. So
oh, Simon, this is the first
yeah.
time that I've actually spoken with you since your loss, and I just wanted to, give you my condolences. I've lost a parent, and not that long ago, and it was quite a struggle. So, thinking about you.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah. Um, yeah. Well, yeah, we got the news over Boxing Day. Don't want to drag the mood down, but yeah, really appreciate your words. But yeah, did you go to the party then?
Me, Simon, I'm a
Yeah.
nobody. I'm like no, I absolutely did not go to the party, but half the stage did, and so we're listening to all their amazing stories and living vicariously through them. So it sounds like an amazing party.
Yeah, did you guys
Awesome.
went to the room with that ship he had, the model?
Oh, I saw pictures. People
That was a
were taking
library.
selfies in front of the boat, the big wooden boat that he used to do. I think didn't he used to do podcasts in front of that thing before he got the
Yeah,
clock?
yeah,
Yeah,
that was
I
his
placed
library.
I placed a small Playmobil inside on that thing. So I don't know if you have seen that already, but the next interview, if you see a small Playmobil on top of the boat, I put it there. Okay.
I think what's quite interesting is that Bitcoin's kind of hit this level where we have these very like Michael Saylor's kind of become a celebrity of Bitcoin. And we've had all these different characters over time. But what I think is quite interesting is like the obviously Bitcoin just is so many different things to so many different people. And just even listening to how people feel about like the concept of this almost Grammy like event where if you didn't get invited, you either feel very jealous about it or sore about it, or you bring it down, or you love it, or you're curious. I think it's just pretty fascinating, isn't it, that we've got this thing that brought us all together called Bitcoin that just has all of these. I mean, the characters that I've met over the years, I'm just so grateful for all the different types of people I've got to meet over the last decade or so. But then you have something like this event, and it brings out like all these different ethos in people. Like, so some people are, very seeing it as like some kind of centralizing force, and therefore it conjures up a certain emotion depending on your ethos
Simon,
to Bitcoin.
I
And
think taking what you're saying and combining it even with what Ben was saying earlier is um, things are changing a lot. And so really hold on to these relationships. The term Bitcoiners is going to change a lot. We'll probably have to switch to early Bitcoin adopters as that group of people that we really connected with well at these events. That, there's six of us in my community that are really diligently meeting up as, a Bitcoin meetup group. So these are the relationships that we really want to cherish and hold on to going forward, because as Bitcoin adoption, comes about, it's going to really change the dynamic of the group of quote unquote Bitcoiners that we see at these events and whatnot. And they're not going to have as much in common with us in, a lot of these different areas. So for whatever reason, our brains are wired the same. And at any event I've been to, it's felt like a giant family reunion where I've known these people for a long time. We're on the same wavelength. It's been so cool. So in that regard, it's just, for me, this party was like a family reunion that I missed out on, because I don't, I'm happy for everybody that's there and don't in any way despise it at all. I just regret not being there. So what an amazing time.
yeah, and that it's part of growth, right? Like, I think you see it in all these. I remember like in my childhood, I used to be a part of, like, in the UK, before I left, I used to be part of like the drum and bass movement as a very young kid. um, and it felt like a real bottom, small niche movement. And then as it got bigger and bigger and bigger, you have this like different emotion as things get commercialized and things like that. And I think that was also something that happened like with Apple. Like, there was this community of people that had an Apple laptop back in the day, or an early Apple computer, and then suddenly Apple becomes this thing where everyone in the world has an iPhone, and you feel like a bit resentful because you were part of the early community. And at I've seen that journey throughout Bitcoin. It was like this real bottom up movement of us versus the bank, the anarchist movement, the cypherpunks. And then over time, you've had all these different journeys and the trials and tribulations. And now you're getting that level where large corporate, public companies, MicroStrategy, and then you've got all of the ETF type people, and then you've got the nation state type people, and it's like this. You have this bittersweet thing where Bitcoin is getting the adoption that you imagine. Well, we couldn't even imagine it would
Hey,
get this
Simon, I'm gonna rug
successful
you.
in the early days. Yeah.
I just we another person that was at the party. Uh, he definitely probably knows how to throw a party since that's his area of expertise. Has done a lot of hanging out with Sailor over the years. I posted it up in the nest. Rest assured, guys, he's going to throw us a party. So those of us who are having the FOMO, it looks like Omar's going to take care of us. So it's the second, maybe third thing back now. But Omar, I would definitely be interested in coming to one of your parties, sir. He was at the party for a while, but I think he left. If you wanted to come up on stage, and there you are. Hey, buddy, Omar, were you there?
What's up, brother?
What
How are
is
you?
up? Great. How are you?
Good, good, good. Yeah, I was thinking actually, this morning I was walking my dog and I
Hey,
was
Omar. First of
thinking
all,
about
can you just?
yeah.
I know there's probably a ton of people in here. Just give us a brief. Uh, I know you went into quite some detail with actually where you guys would hang out and everything else. Just what you do, and then we'll just leave it at you used to hang out with Sailor, still do sometimes. Anyway, what do you do? And you know how to throw a party, right, sir?
Yeah, I mean I'm in the club business. I've been in the club business in Miami, in New York, and in Washington D.C. since the early 2000s. And that's how I met Sailor. He was one of our clients. So like I say it all the time, and I have to keep repeating it. Him and I don't have a Bitcoin relationship, but we know each other really well. We talk sometimes on the phone. I remember I did actually. Oh, funny enough, I did own MicroStrategy in the early 2000s when it crashed after they overreported their revenue. I don't know if everybody is aware of the story, and that's why I always repeat that I'm traumatized, by owning that stock. And I tell Michael all the time, so I just stick to Bitcoin and Bitcoin only. So yeah, I was at the party, and to me, it was not as great as I would have wanted a New Year's Eve party to be. And I told him this. I think 100K party should not have been on New Year's Eve. I think a lot of people should have been invited. There were a lot of shitcoiners. I myself witnessed, and I told Michael the first time, second time he disappeared. But I told him the first time that there were some people that were hosting a live podcast in the middle of the whole thing, where they were literally talking about what would be the potential meme coin of the year in 2025. I'm not too sure who handled the guest list, but it was I mean, yeah, there were a lot of familiar faces that I saw there, but there were also a lot of people that, again, I
Bitcoin
feel.
Magazine.
What's that?
Bitcoin Magazine.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Thank you.
Eric was also doing a lot of the inviting, and I feel like at some point, I think the good people were all invited by Eric. He did skip a few. I mean, obviously, but I think there were a lot of people that were just invited to fill the floor. You know, there were just an excessive amount of people that again should not have been there. So yeah, I was saying maybe we should do our own party and.
It sounds like you know how to throw a party, sir.
Yeah, I would love to. Again, I was walking my dog early, and I was like, you know what? All of these people that I hang out with on X every day, the Justins, the Dark Side, Lauren, Asteroid, Puncher, all of these guys that I talk to every day that are so passionate, that are on spaces every time of day and night, that should have definitely been there because
Because they have no
they
life.
do a lot. I'm sorry.
I should
Oh, I see. You
we should
just
have
said they're
actually
on
been invited.
spaces. They're on spaces day and night, and obviously they have no life
Yeah,
if they're.
exactly. Yeah,
We
I
should have
mean,
been there.
See?
I'm pissed. I'm jealous. That's
absolutely,
bullshit. That's some bullshit.
absolutely.
It's not a
So
party without us. Come on.
so you know what? I think we should do our own party, and
Yes.
I would love to do something. I was thinking to do something in Ibiza. That way, the those that are first of all, it'll be much better for a lot of reasons. And we could do something where we could get a big villa in Ibiza, in Playa d'Embosa. It's an island that I'm very familiar with because I did work there on multiple summers back in the days. So I do have a lot of connections there, and we could have everybody come in, and we could all have fun. Do a couple of dinners and do a huge party at a
How
house,
many
something
people?
similar to that.
How many people could
Well,
be?
we could definitely do something north of 500,
So,
and we
so
would be
most
in
of the
charge of
people that
inviting.
are up here right now could actually be at this
Well,
party.
for sure, exactly. I mean, the people that are here for sure would be here. I will invite Michael, but we would be in charge of the guest list for sure. I mean, Michael would be there, Eric would be there, his friend Bill would be there, who's not a really on Spaces. He's not known at all, but he's a big Bitcoin guy that nobody knows of. I know he's, he owns a lot of Bitcoin. There are a lot of people that
Bill, you're in. Bill is in.
yeah, so a lot of we should definitely do something like that, and we have plenty of time to set it up. I mean, I'll take care of 95% of the work. I'll need your help, guys, with with the guest list,
Not a
and
problem.
we'll go and have fun. We do a nice trip to Ibiza for 3-4 days, and and we'll just enjoy ourselves. So the reason I want to do it in May is because that's when the season starts in Ibiza. So we can't really go earlier than that just because everything will be closed. So all the nice restaurants, the Leos, the Blue Marlins, and Ushuaias, everything opens late April, early May. So I think it'll be great to do something in May.
Omar,
You
you
know,
you got
Well,
us sold. Set a date.
perfect.
We'll
Let's
book
do it.
some
Yeah, let's shoot
tickets.
for second week of May. But let's maybe do a space once a month just to. Starting maybe in February, we should do a space like once a month just to keep up with with the
Isn't
schedule and
May
everything.
when a bunch of Bitcoiners are going to Las Vegas though?
Oh yeah, the Bitcoin conference.
I
When is
like
that?
yeah. So you'd be splitting the audience, but I,
No, we don't want to do that. No, we don't want to do
all
that.
right.
We could push it to June
Yeah,
then.
I
That's
didn't
not
get
What
to
uh
about
meet you. I
doing
don't
it
think.
around Bitcoin Prague before or after that, so that we'll already be in Europe and be able to?
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, we could schedule it around that time, and I know that Ibiza, as long as we avoid July, August, it'll be great. So May, June would be perfect, just because that's when all the British kids that saved all year to go trash the island, that's when they usually get there, July, August. So I think June would be perfect. I don't
Omar,
know when
another
Prague
idea,
is.
just thinking out loud, is one of the other Balearics. I lived on Menorca for a year and a half. We could do Mallorca or Minorca instead of Ibiza.
So, Justin, the problem with Mallorca is, and again, I know you're familiar with it, and I know you'll know what I'm talking about. The problem with Mallorca is that everything is so mixed up. You have the kids from Magaluf, which is the Scandinavians and the Brits. So we will have a great time if we get a house and do our party there. But once you're outside, you're mixed up with the wrong crowd. As opposed to Ibiza, if you stick to Playa d'Embosa, which is the area that's closer to the airport, you'll be with the older crowd and the nicer, the fancier crowd. So even if we all go out to dinner and everything, it'll definitely be much nicer and cleaner.
This
The
sounds
only two or
amazing.
three,
I'm gonna go
yeah, the
with
only two.
Omar on this one because it sounds like you know what you're talking about. So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll set it up, guys. You guys won't have to do anything. I'm just gonna want you guys to show up. I want you guys to help with the guest list. Obviously, we already have probably like 100 people that are. I mean, not here on this space, but on this space, I see at least 10, 15 people that I would love to for us to have here. But it will be your party. It won't be Sailor's party. It won't be my party. It'll be everybody's party.
Everybody's party. I
And
love that.
exactly. And we'll do it in a way where we go back to the time where what Bitcoin is about. Everyone is equal.
Yes,
There's
I love
no
it.
there's no leader. There is nobody that we're going to there's no idol. There is nobody that we're going to worship. And I'm not saying this to direct it to anyone in particular, but that's
Except
what
Michael
Bitcoin is
Saylor.
about.
No, I'm just kidding. That's yeah,
Yeah.
sarcasm being my
No,
love language.
he's a good guy. He's a good guy for
Yeah.
sure.
Will yellow be allowed though?
I don't know who's yellow.
Yeah, but
Oh, come on.
Oh yeah, absolutely, for sure. Why
Hey
not?
guys, this is great. Ending things on a high note is wonderful. I'm gonna take my wife out for some brunch here. So um, I love this idea. Let's definitely. I'm excited, really, because anytime I hang out with Bitcoiners is a good time. So let's last words. Ben, any last words, parting words, sir?
The one last thing I would say, as you were alluding to earlier, is that on a local level, it's very important to make those Bitcoin connections with, kind of build your local group of people that you can lean on each other, and I think everybody becomes more resilient. So I'm trying to do that here where I am in Calgary, and if you don't have a local Bitcoin community that is already set up in your town or city, then make that your New Year's resolution. Start aggregating the Bitcoiners in your local area, and you'll be surprised what can come out of it.
Yes, for sure. I second that wholeheartedly. We had our own Bitcoin center, a physical building in my town for a while. A bunch of the Bitcoin community here was listening in and out of this conversation. We support each other wholeheartedly. We've got 2 events scheduled for the next couple of days. So it's 100% sign that message from Ben. Tomer, anybody else? Parting words, Dark Side, Justin, anybody want to chime in? Closing words?
I would just say, along with what Ben just said there, that I hear sometimes people say, "Why would you spend the time and money to go to events?" And what my experience has been at a couple of conferences I've been to and doing local meetups in San Diego is that every single person who I interacted with in Prague, that was Michael Saylor, Jack Mallers, Daniel Prince. Forget if I think Tomer was there. Can't remember if Ben was there, but I mean, everybody who was there was one of us. I mean, there was no pretension whatsoever. Samson Mao, Adam Bach. Um, these
Justin, are
people
you
just
name dropping right now?
no, because I had massive imposter syndrome. I wasn't one of them, but right from the very start, I met Daniel Prince, and he said, "Hey, come to dinner with us." Nobody knew who I was. Eric Stacks was there. Same thing. Can't say enough good about him and his wife and daughter. And um, I shouldn't have started mentioning names because I'm just going to forget people. But I was totally accepted by everybody. I mean, Daniel took me up and introduced me to everybody. And anyway, the point I'm trying to make is if you perceive these people on X and see them on TV sometimes is they're not one of us. They're a notch above us. They don't hold themselves that way at all. I can't speak for everybody, but everybody that I encountered, I just can't say enough good about. Same thing at local meetups. You get a little bit nervous, but you show up and you're immediately friends with people, and you see they're human just like us. So I would say take the time, and man, the parties there are absolutely amazing. And Canute, same thing. I mean, I got to meet this guy and be friends with this guy, and Luke DeWolf and all the Germans over there, and Scandinavians and Europeans, English people. It was amazing. So can't say enough good about that.
Yeah, no,
Looking forward to doing
absolutely.
it again. If
For
we can
sure. I
go to the
think,
Mediterranean with Omar and do something
oh
over
man,
there, man, it'd be
so
absolutely amazing.
excited. Yeah. No, I think you're echoing what Omar said, about us all being the same. I know I've mobbed Ben multiple times at Pacific Bitcoin a couple of years, and every time I passed him, I tried to grab onto him or say hi to him. He took it very well because he was kind of a little celebrity status, but me being a Canadian guy too, I just every time he walked by, I'd say hi. He was just cool. He's just one of us. We're all just the same, which is what Omar's point was. Justin's point. I love it. Uh, Anybody else, Tom?
Yeah, I was just going to say, not only are these things good to go for the reasons you said, like, yeah, I've actually made some of the best friends of my life in the last few years. I remember the very first Bitcoin conference I went to. I I hooked up in an Airbnb with Fractal and Crypt, Knut Van Home, and Brecky, and we had kind
When
of
you
like
say hooked up,
sorry, we shared a room, and
okay.
we made it like this artist writer hangout, and tons of people came to our rooms. We had parties of 40, 50 people in there, and but we woke up in the mornings and had coffee together and talked about Bitcoin, and ever since. At any time where we get an opportunity to get together, there's like a real friendship established there, and we call each other for advice and to run things by, and so there's a sense of you can manifest your desires in the Bitcoin space simply by showing up. and that was really what was amazing about these things, and it's why I try to make it out to these things, because everybody is really down to earth, right? Like, Michael Saylor might have a bodyguard or two around him, but he's still accessible to you, and nobody else does. And so Jeff Booth is there, whoever is there, right? Dropping names or not, like, you can go and talk to everybody, and you're no more or no less. Everyone, it's a peer-to-peer system, and it's a peer-to-peer engagement when you go to these events. So it's really a wonderful opportunity to get to talk to people, and especially if you want to contribute in some way and you start putting something out there, showing up at these types of events really gives you the opportunity to sh- to share and connect with other people who can help you manifest your desires. I'll leave it at
Yeah,
that.
that's good stuff, Tomer. I was totally kidding when I was giving Justin a bad time about name dropping and stuff. I think I know him well enough that he realizes I'm just joking around. Justin.
Yeah, and along with that, I would say that what I saw from Sailor is I didn't see a bodyguard. There might have been one there, but the guy in no way held himself above us. Same thing, Adam back. Hey, Jack Mallers came out, and I mean, the guy could have spoke and then split. He came out and was like interviewing Daniel Prince's daughter and the German girl there who's 13, and two or three of the girls who were there. Um, and these guys were going to not Sailor, but they were going to dinner with us, and people were hanging around afterward. And so I saw no sign whatsoever of any sort of arrogance on the part of these people. And so I'm so glad I went, because I saw that really they are one of us. So I understand, um, the Sailor's net worth kind of complicates things for him, but what I saw from him is he came out and was mingling and was genuinely interested in people and was kind. So I'm very, very glad I went for that reason.
One of us. Anybody else? Closing words. Well, thanks, guys. As always, these spaces for me are a lot of value because there's so many brilliant minds in here. Contribute a lot. I hope a lot of the other listeners get a lot out of these.
Ah,
Uh, except that guy. Ben, appreciate you, man. I've learned so much from you. I have done multiple times in multiple different wallets, pausing YouTube, rewinding, going back. So I think your work is invaluable to the whole Bitcoin ecosystem. I refer so many people over to you, to your channel. So many amazing tools and people like you and Tomer and what Tomer's written over the years. I mean, just such a great group. I'm glad you guys are all on the stage right now and we're able to, share these moments. We're super lucky to be alive at the same time together. Like, what an amazing time. So, love all you guys. Hope you guys have a great afternoon. Happy New Year, and hope to hear from you soon. Oh, and
Cheers,
Omar, I
guys.
can't, I can't wait for that party, man.
Yes, sir. You and I both.